This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Welcome to a Monday edition to kick off another week of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. The countdown to Labor Day weekend is on, and the Bombers are 3-1 after a thrilling win last night at IG Field. Great to have you with us. I'm Andrew Paterson, along with the CTO, Michael Remis, who we'll bring in just a moment. First things first, big thanks to all of our sponsors here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, including Canadian Club Whiskey, Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Not Autocorp, Boston Pizza, Assiniboia Downs, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Breezy Bend Country Club, and our betting partner, Cool Bet Canada. I'm so fired up for this program. There is so much to get to. First and foremost, big win by the Blue and Gold, and so much to talk about coming out of last night's game. The return of Andrew Harris, Mark Leggio, Jake Mayer on the Calgary side of things. We're going to get into all of that with our boy Darrin Bauming coming up in about 15 minutes. And after that, the story of the weekend, certainly north of the border, I think, for hockey fans. Epic trolling by the Carolina Hurricanes and the crazy offer sheet they signed Jesperi Kotkaniemi, the Montreal Canadiens, to. We'll see how that's going over in Montreal and how Habs fans felt about the Canes' Twitter work after the signing. Joey Alfieri coming up a little later on. And if you were like me and had to leave to go to the Bomber game, you may have missed live the incredible ending of the epic playoff at the BMW Championship between Bryson DeChambeau and Patrick Cantlay. Patty Ice got it done. And DeChambeau, it was something. These guys apparently hate each other now. Lots to get to going into the Tour Championship. And of course, the Ryder Cup coming up in just a few weeks' time. So really looking forward to having a former caddy on tour, an Aussie, Dubs Anderson. Mr. Dubsy is a good friend of Gabe Morency. He's often a contributor on Sports Grid along with Gabe and Cam. So we're going to talk to Dubs a little later on, get his take on what happened yesterday at the BMW Championship, and see what he likes for the Tour Championship, as well as how all of this drama going on around the U.S. team might affect the upcoming Ryder Cup. It should be a great, great show. Great to have you all with us, and let's get Michael Remis in here to get things going. Remo, how was your weekend?
Great weekend, Huss. Got a bit nice there Saturday afternoon. Yesterday turned out to be a beautiful day. Beautiful evening for some Bomber football, and what an ending. I'm seeing a lot of comments in chat. Oh, I don't think I have any nails after that game. It took a couple years off my life. Someone said, hey guys, you be serious. Like you couldn't watch that 52-yard attempt at the end. I said, I don't do that on sports. I'm not sitting there like this, covering my eyes. Like, I can't watch. But I was sitting with my wife watching on the couch, and she's like, man, she's like to me, yeah, this is really intense right now. You didn't want Calgary to come back, and it kept dunking and dinging. You and I were texting, pulling out all the stops, including putting their freshly new minted quarterback, Jake Mayer, in danger with that trick play. Took a decent hit to try to get closer in field goal range, but Paredes' 52-yard attempt couldn't quite get through the uprights. It was an incredible thing. And we also, again, we can get to the offer sheet later. That offer sheet, I was smiling all Saturday night from that offer sheet. I was in a great mood. I thought it was so funny. And I was also very thankful because last week for Hockey News, the biggest story was Val Filppula signing in the Swiss League. And to have an offer sheet, not only an offer sheet, a revenge offer sheet with a $20 signing bonus and all the tweets accompanying. Oh, that was juicy. So, it was great.
It certainly was. What up, Shark Mifley? The game last night was a nail biter. Leighton Janis says, they say a hot dog takes 35 minutes off your life. That Bomber game took 35 years off my life. pretty accurate, Leighton. Hey, Jackie's Idol. Hi, everyone. Tuning in from Toronto, Ontario. Born and raised in Winnipeg, now living in Toronto. Well, we got you covered, Jackie. We're here every day. I guess that would be 2 o'clock Eastern, breaking down all the biggest stories in and around the Winnipeg sports scene, Canada, and of course around the world. And yeah, we will get into the Kotkaniemi offer sheet. That will be that is something else. I just have to say though about last night. I know a lot of people, sort of woke up. It's been cool around here. We've had such a gorgeous summer. The last week's been sort of crummy. And I was really wondering how the crowd would be. And I knew it would be a little smaller than the first couple games. That was expected. But man, for a day that started out feeling like September, it was an absolutely glorious, glorious night at the game last night. I got to shout out the Knott gang and Trevor Knott for the wonderful hospitality last night at the game. Saw Stretch from Assiniboia Downs. We'll get to the ASD picks a little bit later on in the program as well for tonight's action out at Live Racing. But the game last night had everything, Remis. I mean, it had an incredible record-breaking streak of completions by Jake Maier, the return of Andrew Harris. But as you mentioned, the story really leaving the game was the leg of legs himself, Mark Leggio, who I did a tweet. I don't know how I have never butchered the spelling of a name worse than I did of Mark Leggio last night. But as he says on his Twitter profile, he just goes by Legs, Leggz. And he had the leg last night, Reem, and it started off somewhat conspicuously for Leggio, missing the extra point on the Andrew Harris touchdown that would have put the team up 7-3 at the time. But after that, had 4 kicks and made him. It is important to note, not that it will count in the long run, but Leggio did originally miss a 35-yarder to go ahead, but the Bombers didn't snap the ball in time, took a time count penalty. They moved it back, and then he blasted, was it a 45-yarder right through the uprights? And then the Bomber defense stepped up, and it was wild. I mean, where I was sitting in the corner, Adam Bighill was back at safety on that final drive. It was a very interesting mix, of personnel as they, tried to avoid any big plays. And it came right down to the end. Rene Paredes with a 52-yard attempt to win. And the wind was a factor as well in the game last night. He came up just short, and the home team gets another win. The Bombers' incredible play at IG Field continues. But I have to admit, coming out of the game, incredibly impressed with Jake Maier. Impressed with the resilience of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And maybe we'll play this clip, Mike O'Shea after the game, Reem. Listen, he's not going to sit there and, bitch about his team after a win. But I have a feeling that the tape sessions with the team, especially the receiving core, aren't going to be very fun because I think you can say that this game would not have been anywhere close to as tight as it was if the Bomber receivers in particular did a better job of holding on to the football. There were just a number of drops, and it was pretty much everyone. Kenny Lawler, Rasheed Bailey, Drew Wolodarski. Wasn't a banner night for the receiving core when it came to just, catching the footballs that Zach Collaros was putting in there. But in the end, a win's a win. The Bombers get to 3-1, and now we get ready for the Labor Day Classic. Let's get that clip from Mike O'Shea afterwards, because I think it sort of summarizes the way he was feeling after last night's win over Calgary.
Yeah, here, hold on. Let me fire this thing up.
Yeah, I know I'm pretty excited about the win tonight, and I think I'm going to leave it at that. We're going to the film gets watched tomorrow morning, and tonight I'm going to probably have a beer.
That's what you do after a win. Watch the film tomorrow. Save it for tomorrow. Enjoy the W. Because if it was the other way around and the team played incredible, but somehow you lost by 2, you'd be feeling with that loss and then moving into the positives going forward. So all in all, though, Remis, Leggio was really the story. And let's get clip number 2 ready, because this was quite interesting. I mentioned he missed the extra point early on in the football game. And then Mike O'Shea threw Leggio out to kick a 50-yarder not too long after that. And it seemed like it was a real vote of confidence for the young man. obviously with Tyler Crapigna on the 6-game injured list, they didn't have any other options. But he came up big, and I think this really gave the coaching staff the confidence in him to put him in the situations they did later on the game. Here's Coach O'Shea.
Well, I saw him make from 55 in warm up going that way. I mean, it was the same kick, right? So, yeah, that was what his distance was.
Was it important too to send that vote of confidence?
That's a question for him.
Not for you. You didn't feel that you needed to give him a pat on the back in the form of a 50-yard drive?
Well, I thought he kicked well during the week of practice, so I thought he was feeling confident. If he wasn't feeling confident, I might not trot him out. But to me, he had the confidence, so it's not a matter of giving him that, right? He owned that in warm up and during the week of practice. He was prepared during the week to do that.
All right, so there's the coach, and you know what? I respect that for Mike O'Shea. I mean, he's not. I mean, this is pro football. I mean, a guy, if he's in your roster, he's got a job to do, and they put him in gave him the opportunity to do it, and he went out and did it. And when you think about the missed extra point, the missed field goal that would have been a death knell for the football team at the end of the fourth quarter, the stat line for Leggio is going to read 4 for 4, Remis, and for a young man making the first start of his career as a kicker, he had been doing he was capable and doing some punting before. This was huge for the Bombers. I mean, let's face it, the last couple of weeks we've spent quite a bit of time talking about special teams and the massive loss that Justin Medlock has been, and no one's going to come in and replace Justin Medlock and get to the level of excellence and consistency that Medlock provided the Bombers all those years right away. But I'll tell you what, considering much of the concern that I think the organization had as well. I mean, they brought Crapigna in, didn't they? A hell of a start for Leggio. And I'm sure he went to sleep with a big smile on his face. And, when he gets back to practice, we'll feel much more a part of the team. And I think much more confidence going forward. There could be some real reciprocal effects of what happened for the Bombers kicker last night in a good way for the blue and gold.
Yeah, what a performance. I mean, we had so many questions about the kicking leading into the game. I mean, how do you replace Medlock, who's one of the best of all time, and he's been special teams player of the year, one of the best players the last couple of years. I mean, their whole offense would be like, okay, you get anywhere close to field goal range, and it was guaranteed points. And you saw the first couple of games, they were tentative when it came to going for field goals. It just wasn't the same that they would. But, the guy misses the extra point, and then you're throwing him out there, all right, let's kick a 50-yarder, and he nails it. And he nails his, 3 other kicks, going 4 for 4. I mean, I think that's a big boost for the offense going forward, a boost for him personally. I mean, you listen to his post-game comments, and we'll play those coming up. I mean, he's ecstatic. He's fired up. He can't believe that he's, kicking field goals in the CFL. So I thought it was awesome for him. And I mean, the play of the game was the time count violation at the end and missing the field goal. It was almost like a reverse icing the kicker. They almost iced themselves. And he said like he wasn't set up quickly enough, and you could kind of see as it was going on TV that it was winding down. It was going to be tight. And I mean, they blew the whistle. He kicked it anyways. Didn't go in, and you're kind of thinking, oh shit, like that's not good. This is a 35-yarder. You got to make those. And he nails down the pipe, no doubt, on the longer one. That's awesome. So it seems like the Bombers' kicking situation, if anything, you're feeling a lot more confident now than you have at all this year since losing Justin Medlock. So that's great.
I see here Todd Fertani's in the chat. What up, Todd? Got home from Lac du Bonnie in time to catch the last few minutes of the Bomber game and then a replay of the golf. Wow. Yeah, it was, I mean, I wouldn't want to miss that game last night live at IG Field, but I can tell you, if you were on the couch going back and forth between the two TSN channels of the Bombers at the end of the golf, it was absolutely phenomenal, and we will talk about it with Dubs Anderson a little bit later on today. All right, Darrin Bauming's going to come up in just a few minutes, and we will dive fully into the Bombers' performance as well as what Calgary did well last night with DB. But Remo, let's get to the story from hockey over the weekend, this offer sheet. Was it Saturday afternoon? We get the word. I think Elliot Friedman fires something up. Frank starts tweeting, and it sounds like an offer sheet's been signed by Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And of course, who did it? The Carolina Hurricanes. And At the start, I didn't see numbers. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And it sort of occurred to me, wow, isn't that funny? It was Montreal that tried to sign Aho via offer sheet a couple years ago. And then you started seeing the social media work by the Carolina Hurricanes, which began with a simple LOL RT of the announcement that Kotkaniemi had signed the offer sheet. And then the statement, and I'll have to get this up, but Don Waddell, a statement about the offer sheet, sort of interestingly quoted, was just sort of a weird statement. And then we realized, here it is. Jesperi Kotkaniemi accepted our offer. He wants to come to Carolina. He sees the core we built here and wants to be a part of that. We're proud, but there's still a waiting period. When you make an offer like that, we saw a vulnerable position. Well, let's rewind to 2 years ago, 2019. Habs, Sebastian Aho accepted our offer. He wants to come to Montreal. He sees our youngsters coming up in the organization and wants to be part of that. We're proud, but there's still a waiting period. Mark Bergevin, they literally copied the exact same tweet. And if that wasn't enough, Remis, then the Carolina Hurricanes, of all things, put out a tweet announcing the offer sheet in French. I mean, the level of pettiness involved in this entire package of the offer sheet is incredible. And I'll tell you what, I can't wait to hear from Joey Alfieri when he joins us a little later on as to how this is played out in Montreal. Because with the $6.1 million a tab, along with that $20 signing bonus, Sebastian Aho's number, well done, Canes. If they sign it, it would put the Habs $2 million over after taking away what they have coming off due to LTIR. So it completely jams them. Not to mention, Kotkaniemi would have to be qualified at the end of next year at $6.1 million. Now, there are many people that feel the Canes and Kotkaniemi have a long-term deal arranged already. And at which point, if he does stay with them, whenever he can re-sign, which I believe on one-year deals is after January 1st, sign a long-term deal at a lower AAV than what is on right now. But it's a bit of a mess for Mark Bergevin and the Montreal Canadiens. They're really stuck between a rock and a hard place. And there's not a single person walking planet Earth right now that doesn't think that this was 100% in retaliation for what happened in 2019 with Sebastian Aho.
Yeah, a couple other Twitter details. This is just like elite level trolling by Carolina. Tweeting out the Uno card where, it's going to you and then you reverse it back on the other person. Tweeting this. I mean, I know the social media team isn't, part of the front office, but, then tweeting, people don't forget. And then the signing bonus, $20, Aho's number. Always relevant bunch of jerks. I'm just going through the timeline, but also changing their Twitter profile, bio to French. I mean, no detail spared. They knew exactly what they were doing. I don't know what to say. I think it's hilarious. I'm here for it. We want to see offer sheets. And Carolina just took this one to another level. I don't want to say completely making it out of spite, but it's pretty clear that spite is part of it.
I had to laugh just quickly on one of those tweets that you just pulled up when they quote tweeted Jack Todd's piece.
Oh, my God.
I got a great laugh out of that because if I'm not mistaken, Jack Todd was one of the guys that said Mark Scheifele should have been in jail for what had happened. I mean, the overreaction after that was noted, and we remember that here in Winnipeg. So the fact that Kotkaniemi's offer to Carolina's offer to Kotkaniemi was a Bush League move. The Canes behaved like a bunch of grade 5 boys trying to see who can stand farthest from the urinal and not giving a damn who gets splashed in the way.
That's I guess we made a splash is the tweet. And there's so many aspects of, the revenge offer sheet, the $20 sign, putting me, hey, Jesperi, we're going to give you a $20 signing bonus. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. I'll screw over my current team or help stick it to them.
Exactly. I mean, what happens? Let's just say Montreal says, whatever, we're going to figure out a way to do this. They waive somebody and they decide to keep Kotkaniemi. I mean, how is he viewed in the organization? How is he viewed by the fan base? I'm not sure how they can match this offer. And, coming back the other way is going to be a first-round pick and a third-round pick. I mean, the Canes are a damn good team. I mean, I think there's a very good chance that first-round pick is sort of towards the end of that first round, and a third-round pick's a third-round pick, especially if it's a late third-round pick. I mean, limited value on that. So I would imagine I have a hard time seeing how they're going to do this, and the return isn't going to be great. And then if the Canes can go and get him at a lower AAV on a long-term deal, playing with a bunch of other Finns like Aho, I mean, it could end up being a pretty shrewd move by Carolina. But the bottom line is, Reem, there is absolutely no way you can justify Kotkaniemi on a one-year deal at $6.1 million unless it was the means to an end of righting a perceived wrong against the Canes organization. And let's face it, that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, and I don't fault Kotkaniemi for being part of this plan to stick it to the Canadiens. I mean, if someone came to you and said, hey, we'll give, I saw a projection for a salary evolving hockey, they said 1.9 million. So, I mean, this is 3 times that. So if someone came to you and said, hey, we'll give you 3 times your current salary, to maybe stick it to your old team, I think you're not going to turn down that money when you're given a hard time in negotiations. I think he's been maybe upset with the organization on, missing, being saddled for some playoff games, the way he's been handled. And someone says, here, it's 3 times your salary. What are you going to do, turn that down? So we'll see what happens long term. It is interesting that, he's clearly not worth 6.1 right now, and you have to qualify him at 6.1, but he was a 3rd overall pick. I mean, there's potential there, and we'll see if Carolina, what happens if Montreal decides to match. And if they do match again, they're over the salary cap. So it was a very well done move by Carolina here. So but hopefully for them, I mean, the player pans out. But for a first and a third, that's the way offer sheets should be done. So good for them.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll go to Montreal. We'll get the latest on the situation with Joey Alfieri from TSN 690 coming up in a little bit. We are going to get back to the football, though. Darrin Bauming is lined up, going to join us in just a second. Before we do that, speaking of the Bomber game, it was great to see everybody last night that popped by and said hi. Just this is the best part of the games right now. Getting together, cheersing friends, high-fiving after big plays, after game-winning missed field goals, or game-winning field goals, as it were. And, of course, hooking up with some folks in the Jim Beam social area by the Still House, the Brugal Rum Hut, and cheersing with a few Canadian clubs. Saw it may have been a Sunday night, but there was a few getting poured last night. I mean, what a great weekend. The weekend's always better with Canadian Club. If you're over beer, try the great taste of Canadian Club with ginger ale or Coke. And, of course, you can get it all around IG Field at every Winnipeg Blue Bomber game, as CC is the official sponsor and spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We're going to have another contest on Friday heading into the Labor Day Classic, and next week for Banjo Bowl, an unbelievable prize from Canadian Club. You're going to want to be with us. For podcast folks, we'll make sure we'll let you know, and we'll utilize social media for this one because we want to get as many folks in eligible to win. So thanks again to CC. Make it CC tonight. Royal Sports, I can't thank the guys enough for their help with these lids, the Winnipeg Sports Talk. Shout out to our friend Car Chen. I know Carter went by and picked one up. I believe the latest inventory list is there's like 3 left of each kind over at Royal, and we might have a couple left for people out of town on the website as well. For those of you, you can get to winnipegsportstalk.com and click the store. But yeah, pop down to Royal, pick up one of the lids before they are gone, and while you're there, you can get ready for big weekend for the Bombers with all the great Bomber merch there. Jet season coming up, NFL season, not to mention camping, bikes, incredible streetwear over in the skate, snow, and surf side. It's all there, 750 Pembina Highway. Royal Sports, great sponsors of ours since day number 1. And speaking of great sponsors of ours, got a chance to cheers our pal DQ Nick last night at the game. Nick was there with the jersey on, all fired up at the end. And again, it's always a great time for Dairy Queen. Support our sponsors, Nick and Nikki, 4 locations here in Winnipeg and Southern Manitoba, including the DQ in Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. and you can hit him up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba if you'd like to get a cake ordered and simply, easy, and quickly pick it up at one of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. All right, let's get back to the Bombers, and let's welcome back the Bomber himself, Darrin Bauming, to Winnipeg Sports Talk. You can follow him, of course, at Bonefire Sports on YouTube, doing great pregame coverage and analysis throughout the week, and hooking up with our guy Chris Walby on Game Day Winnipeg before all Blue Bomber games. Bauming, first things first, how are you doing? I heard you bonked yourself earlier last week.
Yeah, I took a good tumble on my bike, was wearing my helmet as I still, bopped my noggin pretty good. I had a lot of concussions earlier in life, playing football, playing hockey and the like. And, it just goes to show you can't be too careful out there. Got great medical treatment. If you suffer concussion, anybody out there, go see a doctor. It's the best thing you can do. Hustler, your good friend Rob Dreger took care of my neck. I was actually diagnosed with a concussion and whiplash. But great people down at Elite Physiotherapy who took care of me, and thanks to all of them. And I'm all good. Concussion treatment has changed, and this applies to sports as well here, Huss, in that, 3-4 years ago, they used to say, shut it down, cut everything off as far as, physical activity and light and screens and, excitement and all those sorts of things. That has completely shifted and changed. A doctor here at Elite, Dr. Neil Creighton, co-authored a paper a couple years ago. It's completely different now. They want lots of aerobic activity and a return to normal as quickly as possible. You want to avoid, obviously another concussion for about a week or two. So ease back into things, but they said, get back to work, get back to normal, push through the discomfort and pain. And it was far from that, being able to do a pregame show with Chris Walby. So had a lot of fun on the YouTube channel before the game and, putting things out there for the fans. We were looking forward to a rivalry game against the Stampeders. No doubt the Canadian Cowboys had a bitter taste in their mouth with the Bombers getting the best of them in their 2 previous meetings, regular season finale, and then the Western semifinal in 2019. Winnipeg builds on it with another win at home, a huge one to improve to 3-1. And I know this will lead into something you and I will talk about today, Huss. Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl, the 2 best teams in 3-0 Riders, 3-1 Bombers. I can't wait for Sunday. I'm making the trip out to Regina. It's a special year, and I'm not going to miss it for the world.
No, it doesn't get much better than the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl, and even better when both teams are looking as good as they are. Hey, Bardo, I see you in the chat there asking me if I saw 60 Minutes Sunday night. I didn't. I was at the game. But I did hear about the piece on Alex Smith. The E60 on Alex Smith's return is simply incredible. It is must see and one of the most inspiring stories in football. If you do have Bomber comments or questions, you can throw them in the chat and we'll get to those. We got to start off with Mark Leggio. I mean, there's so many different things. Harris's return, Jake Mayer, but the special teams has been a big topic, certainly on this program, certainly when you've been talking about Justin Medlock leaving. We've got Tyler Corpigna on the 6th game, and Mark Leggio was almost handed the job in camp and then didn't have it to start the season. A magical night, 4 for 4, game-winning field goal, and basically getting a mulligan on the game winner after the time cloud. I mean, there was something of everything. Let's talk about the rookie kicker and his impressive performance.
Yeah, huge performance for Mark Leggio. Not his pro debut, but his pro place-kicking debut. He's been the Blue Bombers punter, obviously, since game 1, but following a seemingly unseen injury to Tyler Corpigna, he's on the 6-game injury list officially with a hamstring. It opened the door for Mark Leggio to emerge. Let me walk the viewers through the thought processes around the Blue Bombers kicking game in 2021. It started with, where's Justin Medlock? Will he come back? And obviously he didn't. A great cost-cutting measure kind of automatically handed to general manager Kyle Walters and going from $170,000 plus to a rookie entry-level contract for Mark Leggio. He's the only kicker to start camp. And the initial thought is, wow, okay, they have a ton of confidence in this guy. But from an objective observer, we're going to have to see how it goes. Couple rough days in the early going of camp. Montreal Alouettes had 4 kickers on their training camp roster, and Tyler Carpini was the first to be cut. 48 hours later, he's in Winnipeg, and it's, wow, okay, I guess Mark Leggio, the young Canadian rookie out of Western, isn't quite ready for primetime. It went from pure confidence to serious question marks in the confidence in Mark Leggio. What did we see from Tyler Carpini? Well, not much. He was okay. Definitely does not have the same leg strength as I would say the majority of kickers in the CFL. Pretty much changes his entire delivery when kicking above 40 and 45 yards. Really has to drive the ball. Just doesn't have that natural leg strength. What we saw from Mark Leggio is great power and pretty good accuracy punting. But what were we going to see from him in the field goal game? And I was concerned. I know a lot of people were concerned. Rasheed Bailey pulls in his 3rd touchdown of the season early in the game, and Mark Leggio misses the 32-yard convert. Oh boy, what are we going to get in this game? Well, they rolled him out pretty soon after, crushes a 50. The Jumbotron zooms in on him. His face is just pure elation. Talk about getting, a 500-pound gorilla off your back. That was a great confidence-building kick for Mark Leggio. He went on to kick 3 more, so going 4 for 4 in the game, including that game winner. And you mentioned it was a time count violation, and that moved them back 10 yards. Normally you would lose a down, but because it was inside 3 minutes and the Bombers were already on 3rd down, they moved them back 10 yards. So a 35 became a 45. No issue for Mark Leggio. I don't think distance is the problem. It's accuracy, and it's between the ears. But he was ice cold and money in that game last night, Hustler, and a huge performance for him. Bit of a mulligan for sure, but that's the way the football gods painted the picture. And for Mark Leggio, going into very, very unfriendly confines at Mosaic next week, it's nice to have a 4 for 4 game under his belt to go in there with a good, chin held high and confidence good.
Well, for sure. Huge for the football team. Huge for, I think, the confidence of the coach in their kicker. And I mean, confidence, so much of that job is a mental one, and having a performance like that is huge. The other big story heading into the game, I guess we got it Saturday morning, was the Bombers depth chart, and who was there as RB1 was Andrew Harris. Listen, before I ask you about Andrew, Darrin, let's hear what Harris had to say about his return last night post-game.
Yeah, it felt great. I mean, after the first series, kind of got the jitters out of the way, and it was just good to be out there. And that was definitely a gully win on offense. I mean, we still got a lot of work to do, but it was great to kind of get that win in that kind of fashion. Just a goalie kind of, a grinder kind of a game. And, some of those runs were tough runs, and we were able to get that big kick at the last second there, and then our defense shows up. So, I mean, it's one of those games where it gets you fired up, and there's lots of things to fix, but you come up with a win like that, it's great for everyone.
Could see you jumping around before your first touch. Obviously pretty exciting just to be back, and it's been a real long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to get back on the field in general, it was amazing. And, when you get the ball in your hands and you still feel like you can do the things you've been doing, it's always a great feeling. So definitely excited about, I'm proud of the game I put out there, and I'm proud of my teammates and how they supported me throughout this whole thing. And I'm just looking to improve on this game and going forward the rest of the games throughout the season.
All right, so there was Andrew Harris post-game yesterday. Darrin, I mean, a nice start to the game, a couple big runs, got into the end zone, handed it off to one of the O-linemen for the spike, and then had a bit of a moment with the crowd. Big emotional lift, but also a big lift to the Bomber running game. What did you think about 33 in his debut this season?
Same old Andrew Harris, right? Watching him, get a couple short carries early and then rip off that 20-yard run, I think really got, the wheels in motion for Andrew Harris. It's been nearly 2 years, if you can believe it, since he was, taking real live bullets and actual hits from opposition. So I looked at his numbers post-game. 86 yards. And I was like, 86 yards, that stands out. What is that? He averaged 86 yards per game last season in 2019. So for him to get 81 on the ground and 5 receiving and be involved in both facets and to hit that number that he averaged and to look like his normal self, lowers the pad level, delivers the blow, shifty when he needs to be, finishing runs, those legs always churning, trademark Andrew Harris. I'm sure the Blue Bombers staff and teammates were as relieved as all of the fans watching that Andrew Harris looks like his regular self.
Well, he had a great game. You just saw some of the Bombers, by the way, just kudos to the Bombers. They do such a great job of some, scenes from inside the locker room. We saw him doing the "you got my back" with the team beforehand, and certainly was there at the end of the game, getting the crowd going for the defense to step up. A big return for Andrew Harris last night. That was the good side of the Bomber offense. The bad side, Darrin, was I can't remember a game where Bomber receivers dropped as many balls as they did last night. I mean, you can make the argument. I believe Bob Irving did, and I sort of agree with them. If the Bomber receivers were a little more sure-handed, that game probably isn't close at the end of the game, but there they were. I mean, what do you make? I mean, it was everyone. Kenny Lawler, Rasheed Bailey. I mean, Drew Wolodarski's had a few bad drops in a couple of games so far this season. It would just seem like we've seen these guys be pretty consistent and pretty sure-handed before. What do you make of the drops and the struggles of the receiving corps?
Offensive coordinator Buck Pierce talked about it all week, about being mentally sharp and fixing some of those areas where, mistakes were made. I commend Zach Collaros after the game. Like he was good. He was 16 of 25. Was that 67%? He would have been well over 70 and, thrown for 300 yards in that game if, they were able to pull those balls in. So, he mentioned how when receivers drop balls, it's glaring. When a tackle is missed, it's glaring. But if you're a quarterback, Collaros said, well, I can make the wrong read. I can, make a mistake mentally and nobody knows any better. So pointing that out, I think really showed a lot of leadership from the Blue Bombers quarterback, but no doubt he must have been grimacing a little bit when those drops happened. Here's what blows my mind, Hustler. If you ask me about Kenny Lawler coming into this season or in week 1, the first word out of my mouth would have been sticky. Like some of the best hands I've ever seen. And now we've seen him drop 3 balls in his last 2 games. I watched pretty much every single 12-on-12 rep in Blue Bombers training camp, like over 3+ weeks. I saw him drop 1 ball out of maybe 100 thrown his way. He's dropped 3 now in the last 2 games, and it raises concern. I don't know if that concern is completely, a serious thing. I think it's more, wow, it could have been a lot better if they were able to pull in some of these catches. And it's not just Kenny Lawler, as you mentioned, Drew Wolodarski, Rasheed Bailey, some others in the last 2 games. But it's glaring when this Blue Bombers offense is having trouble converting on second down. Anybody inside that locker room, offense or defense, even Mark Leggio and the special teams crew, they all say the same thing. The Blue Bombers did enough to win. Their goal every week is to improve to 1-0, and that's what they did. But you go into, you thought the Stampeders Bombers was a rivalry game. Buckle up for the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl. It's going to be tough with huge levels of crowd noise at Mosaic Stadium when the Blue Bombers offense is on the field. They need those guys to secure catches. Zach Collaros is doing a phenomenal job delivering the ball on the money all season.
All right. We have to talk about Calgary for a minute. Yep. Was it we've had so much fun with the Paul Maurice impersonation by Kevin Weeks? I think that Dave Dickinson has the definition of big old church bells. The balls on him to call a bomb on 3rd and 2 from their own 23 in a tie game with a quarterback in his second game was absolutely mind-blowing. And that play was as bizarre of a play as you'll see in the CFL all year long. I retweeted this out. Dustin Nielsen did an incredible job of the call on that play. The call itself, I mean, never mind what happened. We just couldn't believe that they were throwing the football in that case. They get a long ball, and then sure enough, a strip of the fumble, and then Adam Bighill picks it back going up the other way. It shows that Dickinson does not mind swinging for the fences in very, shall we say, unconventional situations. but it was also, I think, a nod to just how well rookie Jake Maier was playing last night. A Stamps record, 16 straight completions. What did you make about the Calgary offense, the calls that Dickinson made, including the pass to Maier late in the game where he took a pretty big hit, but overall a pretty impressive performance by a young man in his second CFL game?
Well, a couple things I'll touch on here. We'll start with Jake Maier. All day long, it was Kadeem Carey, handoffs and check down passing, Josh Huff, and then Markeith Ambles. Like, it was the same three guys he kind of kept going to all day long. Kamar Jordan, 7 catches on 8 targets as well. But there were those series where it was Huff, Carey, Ambles, Carey, Huff, back and forth. And he was just on the money. Jake Maier is continuing to prove that the Calgary Stampeders quarterback room is a true factory of pumping out talent. Nick Arbuckle, Bo Levi Mitchell, now Jake Maier. These are all 3 quarterbacks that are making it happen right now in the CFL. It's pretty impressive. As far as the Stampeders play calling, like, it's one thing to throw a deep pass on 3rd and 2. But it's another to do it when you're inside your own 25-yard line in a tight football game, like absolutely insane. And then the halfback pass, giving it to Ambles and then throwing it to Jake Maier for a first down, I believe it was, is another ballsy call. When you're an opposing team and you're facing a rookie quarterback straight out of college, straight out of FCS football, not even like elite NCAA, but that second level, UC Davis, University of California. It's an opposing defense is always going to say, okay, they're going to keep him comfortable. They're going to be conservative, max protect in a lot of situations to give him time. Not Dave Dickinson, not the Calgary Stampeders. They let it fly and really loose surprise play calling to catch Richie Hall and Mike O'Shea off guard. It's always a chess match between O'Shea and Dickinson, offense, defense, especially special teams. But in this game, if I have to, write it in the history books, it was the Dickinson offense versus Mike O'Shea and Richie Hall's defense. That was really an interesting battle. Winnipeg came out of the gates with a lot of different looks. There's Shane Gauthier, a reserve linebacker and special teamer, right in the starting lineup, not on the starting lineup in the depth chart. I don't think he's even second on the depth chart, but there he was in a unique 4 linebacker set, and they changed it up. 3-man fronts, 4-man fronts, even 2-man fronts. Well, they bring 2 defensive ends in at the same time. Winnipeg tried throwing some different looks at Jake Maier. Didn't matter. I think it was 17 straight completions to begin the game, and he didn't throw an incompletion until the 3rd quarter. If you set a franchise record in Calgary as a quarterback, it says a lot about how special you are in your second game with just how good Calgary's quarterbacking has been with Garcia and Dickinson and on, Doug Flutie. Jake Maier really looks like the real deal.
The best part about that was Dickinson was asked about that after the game and joked that, it just shows you this, we haven't had any good quarterbacks. Of course, he's one of them. And I think the success they've had speaks for themselves. Just quickly, defensively, they gave up a lot of first downs. They gave up a lot of completions. But when it came down to it, they, with the exception of the touchdown from Kadeem Carey, stepped up when they needed to. And it was very interesting to see the way Richie Hall was calling that final minute of the game, DB. I mean, there's Adam Bighill playing 35, 40 yards off the line of scrimmage as a safety right now. They obviously had a plan where they knew how much they could give. And they got right to the edge as that game-winning field goal came up just a yard or two short off the leg of Rene Paredes.
My thought on the Blue Bombers defense was they got a little bit better as the game went on. I thought the defensive line, especially those guys on the interior, Ricky Walker and Casey Sales, those 2 American rookie defensive tackles, played really, really well. Jeff Code and Jefferson doing what they always do. Diplomatically, I'll say I didn't like the defensive play calling from the Blue Bombers defense in the second quarter. I thought Calgary was, really having their way. Great halftime adjustments. Calgary wasn't able to do much more than 2, 3, or 4 play drives through the 3rd quarter. And then in the 4th, Dickinson, not surprisingly, started to figure them out. Late in the game, the Bombers were rushing 2. and dropping everybody back into coverage. And you could see they're really trying to attack the pass catcher right as he catches the ball. That's zone defense. That's prevent style defense. It worked just enough to make it a long enough field goal attempt for Rene Paredes to into the wind. It was a little bit gusty. I noticed the wind started to calm down late in the game, but Paredes is usually pretty good from 50 plus. That 52-yarder with zeros on the clock fell just short. It was a game of inches last night, Hustler, and the Blue Bombers just proved to be the more fortunate team and ultimately the better team. I'm already looking forward to these two teams meeting again in the regular season finale. I think that's in Calgary. That's going to be a fun one. And then who knows, another playoff game between these two. It just might be 1-3 Stampeders. If any team can turn their season around, it's Dave Dickinson's crew.
Darrin Bauming is with us. You can follow him on Twitter at Darrin Bauming, and make sure you're following and or subscribed to Bonefire Sports with all the great Bomber content he's putting together, as well as Game Day Winnipeg, which is a must listen and view before all Bomber games, doing it with the legend himself, Big Chris Walby. DB, a number of people in the chat. One person asking what's up with Nick Dembski and Kyrie Wilson, if we've got any knowledge of them. And we talked a lot about the drops. I see... where was it? David Asplin. Hey, Huss, ask Bauming about Naaman Roosevelt and if the Bombers might take a stab at getting him.
Yeah, when it comes to Roosevelt, I know, John Hodge of 3 Down Nation was mentioning him last night. When these drops start to come and there's, one of the most sure-handed receivers in CFL history in Naaman Roosevelt, a free agent after being released by the Montreal Alouettes. I'll throw cold water on this. I don't expect the Bombers to bring in any sort of receiver help. They are very deep. They have lots of options there. They're not going to move on from the likes of Kenny Lawler and Rasheed Bailey because they've had a couple games where, something between the ears is getting them, or they're hearing the train coming in the train tracks and they're thinking about the move after the catch before pulling that ball in. The other question was about
Dembski and Kyrie Wilson.
Yes. So Dembski is interesting. It seemed like he got injured in practice, and it's a hip injury. Has not been on the field in any capacity since that happened 2 weeks ago. We'll continue to monitor that. Kyrie Wilson and fellow weak side linebacker Jontrell Rockamore, who started week 1 when Wilson was initially hurt. All three of those guys are dealing with hip injuries, and I've been watching the injury report closely. In Kyrie Wilson's case, it was a thigh injury, then a hip, now specifically a hip flexor. It's been well over a month now since he has been able to participate in on-field activities. But of course, Mike O'Shea never going to divulge too much information, but you have to wonder how serious this injury is when, we're creeping into 5-6 weeks now.
No doubt about it. So, a thriller last night. It wasn't maybe an offensive exhibition the way you're used to seeing between these two clubs, but everyone left with a smile on their face, and they got their money's worth last night in a very exciting game. And now, Darrin, we move on to the biggest 2 weeks of the regular season. The Labor Day Classic, the Banjo Bowl, the Riders, the Bombers battling for first place in the West. What a couple weeks we've got coming up.
Oh, no question. And the highway's going to be busy going west this coming weekend. I'm going to try to get out there early and avoid the traffic and settle in a little bit, but looking forward to bringing people Blue Bombers coverage from Regina this weekend. It's weird that it's happening so early in the season. Like, it's August. The weather last night was perfect football weather, but it's already starting to feel like late September. But it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun with these games, regardless if it's early in the season or late in the season. These two games, no question, are going to be ones we're going to look back on when playoff picture is starting to be painted here in the CFL, because these two teams are the best in the CFL right now. And it's going to be a heck of a clash this coming weekend.
DB, great stuff. What do you got cooking on Bonefire this week heading into the Labor Day Classic?
Yeah, obviously there's going to be a lot of rivalry storylines. There's so many new players on this Blue Bombers team, particularly on defense. It's going to be so new to them, this rivalry. I love talking to those first-year Blue Bombers players about what their teammates tell them about playing against the Riders on Labor Day and Mosaic, the back-to-back that is that, and the Banjo Bowl. And, of course, Chris Walby will join me, as he always does. Unvarnished takes on the Blue Bombers. They might be 3-1, but we're not afraid to talk about the areas they need to be better.
No doubt about it. DB, thanks so much for doing this. Glad you're feeling better, sounding great, and say what's up to Walby. Can't wait for the next edition of Game Day Winnipeg.
Appreciate it, Huss. Always love being on the show. You and Remo, be good.
Right on. There's Darrin Bauming at Darrin Bauming, as I mentioned. And for those of you, if you're listening on the podcast, make sure you go to YouTube and check out Bonefire Sports. And while you're there, make sure you're subscribed to Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right, we're going to get to the hockey story. The Canes offer sheet of Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Before we do that, a big shout out to our friends at Knott Auto Corp. Took the game in with Trevor Knott last night. Had a great time. Appreciate the hospitality. And of course, if you're thinking about getting into a new vehicle, why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Knott team? Pop down and see them at Waverly and McGillivray, especially if you've never seen the Teslas before. Got a ride a couple weeks ago in one. Wow, we've got a number of them on the lot, but so much more than just that. Service your car. They'll detail it as well. It's all there at Knott Auto Corp, Waverly and McGillivray, or check out them online at knott.ca. It is a bit nicer out today. Maybe it is patio time again at Boston Pizza. Whether you're inside or outside, the new summer menu is here. You can enjoy the Burger Italiano, the Honey Dill Fried Chicken Sandwich, and all the great patio drinks they put together, including the White Sangria Smash, the Peachy Mojito Royale, and the Bulldog Margarita Fishbowl, and of course, Burger Week starting as well. We'll get the details on what BP has cooking up for the next couple weeks. Summer's here. Bring your appetite. Sunglasses optional at Boston Pizza. And live racing's back tonight at Assiniboia Downs. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they'll go to the post at 7:30 p.m. If you've got your proof of vaccination, you're good to go. In 50% capacity in the lower level, both indoors and outdoors. VLT's upstairs open from 9 until 12:15. And Michael Remis and I will get back at it with our picks and the duel at the Downs a little bit later on before the end of the program. But right now, let's go out to Montreal and welcome in Joey Alfieri to talk about a pretty interesting weekend when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens and the Carolina Hurricanes. Joey, what's good, man? Great to have you back on the program. How's things?
Yeah, things are good. Things are never dull around here. We're just glad to get some drama in the NHL in August. I know it puts Montreal in a bit of a difficult spot, but I love it. I want more of this in the NHL.
Well, I mean, we talked about it a little earlier and went over the tweets. And I mean, the level of pettiness is something I have not seen maybe ever in the National Hockey League. But take us back to Saturday. What were you doing? How did you find out? And what was your reaction when you saw what was going on?
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I were we literally had 1 foot out the door. We were going out to grab a bite to eat. And I told her, my phone got the TSN notification. And I'm like, I got to sit down. I got to process this before we leave the house. And it was great. I mean, just following along on the Hurricanes Twitter account was fun. And I realized, I think, half the fan base is kind of upset at the Hurricanes. Maybe some people are upset at Kotkaniemi, but I think for the most part, the educated fan realizes that, listen, it's business. This is how the NHL rolls. You want to submit an offer sheet a couple of years ago. It was all fine and dandy, but now I feel like Carolina puts you in a much more difficult spot than you put them a couple of years ago. So I think most people are entertained by it, even though they realize that the Canadiens have a huge decision to make this week. But there's definitely a portion of the fan base that's upset at the pettiness. There's no doubt.
Well, you know what I mean? I think you make a great point because obviously these two offer sheets are going to be compared. I mean, I remember when, the Aho offer sheet went down and we talked about it for a little bit and we said, you know what, in some ways, I'm sure Carolina would have liked to have gotten more term, but it wasn't like the number was so outrageous that they weren't going to match. I mean, it was sort of like they just did the work for them and got it taken care of. But Tom Dundon apparently does not forget. We saw that in spades with what happened on the weekend. This one a little different. They had the cap space to make it happen. We obviously know that they were targeting Montreal for a reason and for one reason only. But as you mentioned, this does put the Habs in a very precarious situation because even if they hold their nose and match the offer, and keep Kotkaniemi at $6.1 million, which is probably at least 3 times as to what he's probably worth based on his stats and where he is as an RFA, they don't really have the money to do it right now. I mean, if they sign that deal, even with the LTIR allotment, it would put him $2 million over the cap. I mean, this is a real cap crunch right now, and I'm not sure how difficult the decision is because I think the logic says you might just have to walk away from this.
I think it's so hard to walk away, though. I think they can make it work. There's some cap gymnastics that need to be done. I think they can make it work. I think it gets a little more complicated when Paul Byron has to come off injured reserve and sometime in December. But it's just, given what you have behind Nick Suzuki, you don't have anything, not long term and not in the right here, right now, to play that second line center role. And I mean, the thing is, what makes this really intriguing is that, we don't even know if Kotkaniemi's ready to play in that role. He had a really good first year as an 18-year-old. I think he surprised a lot of people by picking up, I think it was 34 points or whatever. But it's been a roller coaster ride since then. But this is still a young player, even though he's entering year 4. He just turned 21. So to me, I know that there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the ceiling with this player, but I think unless you can find somebody willing to trade you a centerman for the first and third that Carolina's sending your way, maybe you add a little something else. I think it puts you in a tough spot, but you've got a match. I mean, he's come through in some big moments in the playoffs. I mean, most notably Game 6 in overtime against Toronto to force a Game 7. He's the one who scored the big goal. And I get it. He's shooting at over 20% and he can't sustain that in the playoffs. But this is still a young player who's come through time and time again in certain big moments. So as much as he needs to work on his consistency, as much as there's still some untapped potential there, and with that, there are some question marks, I don't know that you can let him walk. I think with Carolina, I think they genuinely like the player. I think they want the player, and they realize that they pay him $6 million this year to get him into the building, and then maybe you can get him signed to a longer term, maybe a 3, 4, 5-year deal at somewhere in the $4.5 million range. It's still expensive for him, but if you like him that much and you feel like you can get the most out of him, I think that's the key. I think Carolina doesn't just see this as a short-term play. You've got to think big picture with this guy. They clearly believe in him.
No, I think you're bang on it. And let me ask you this. I mean, there has been speculation that this is a $6.1 million offer sheet, but the Canes have actually worked out a longer-term deal that, will be signed at a much lower AAV once they are able to do that if he stays there. Are you buying that? Do you think that might be part of this whole song and dance?
I think logically you would have to do it that way, and you have to approach it that way if you're Carolina. And look, I think oftentimes, like, we're hearing this with, like, a lot of Canadiens fans are writing to me on Twitter and saying, it's fine, let him walk, offer sheet Paterson in Vancouver. But it's just, I feel like Carolina executed this to perfection in the sense that the star players that are RFAs, the teams are never going to let them walk. You offer sheet Paterson at 10, 11 million, 4 first-round picks, whatever it is, there's no chance, like, Vancouver might be annoyed, but there's no chance that you're getting Elias Pettersson from Vancouver. So I think Carolina, and the same goes for Montreal back with Sebastian Aho. I think even if the Canadiens offer $10 million a year, there's no way that Carolina is letting a point-per-game player in his early 20s who plays down the middle go. So from that sense, I think Carolina's approached this in a perfect way. You have to identify a young player who has a high enough ceiling that you feel you can get the most out of, but somebody who hasn't reached this potential yet, so that you make the decision for the team who you're targeting. You have to make the decision interesting. And that's what Carolina's done. So I think you're spot on. I think that's the play. You get him into the building at $6 million. It's clearly not worth it. And then if you like him as much as you say you do, you go out, you sign him to a multi-year deal, and the AAV is less, so you don't have to go out and qualify him at $6.1 million next year if he struggles again or only makes marginal improvements in 2021-22. So I think the execution of this offer sheet is a blueprint to what the rest of the general managers should do. This is how an offer sheet should be done. You don't go out and try to spend it, on the big time players, because teams will always match. You go out and you go after the Kotkaniemis who are young enough that they still have enough upside, but that you can go out there and give the teams a difficult time, making this decision over the course of a week.
TSN's Joey Alfieri joining us from Montreal, discussing the Canes signing a Jesperi Kotkaniemi to a $6.1 million offer sheet over the weekend. The Habs have 7 days to match. Just building off what you just said, Joey, we always joke around on the program. I mean, people, when there's nothing to talk about, they start talking about offer sheets, and we're like, let's just leave because these things don't happen. They never happen. Well, it happened in this case for the first time since 2019, and we all know why it happened. The fact that the Canes did this, how do you think this is resonating with other general managers? And as much as you just very correctly stated, this is the way you do it if you want to make it successful. The fact that this is a revenge signing, Do you think that this will do anything to change the way general managers feel and operate going forward?
So I feel like it's just kind of like it gives them another reason to say like, hey, you know what? This is why we don't offer sheet players, because what goes around comes around. So it kind of, unfortunately, proves their point. And I think we've seen, revenge offer sheets before. And, I know there's a lot of people, around here that say like, oh, how can Kotkaniemi show his face in the Canadiens locker room again? I mean, look, I think the relationship between the player and the organization might be, I don't know, I feel like fractured might be a big word, but it's going to be different. But I think the players understand, like, hey, go out and do what's good for you. Again, you mentioned, Kotkaniemi potentially getting 3 times more than what he's worth. If that's what it takes to land a player you believe in, you go out and do it. Unfortunately, I think this just gives the old school general managers pause, and it allows them to say like, hey, you know what? This is why we don't do it, because when we're in a bit of a cap crunch and we have an RFA that we want to bring back at $2.5 million, there's a chance that the team that, we went out and targeted a couple of years ago is going to come back and offer them a lot more money, and it puts us in a difficult situation. So unfortunately, I think this is another example of why we're not going to get a lot of offer sheets, but I'm here for them.
Has anyone heard from Marc Bergevin since all this went down? And what's Bergie doing? Are we going to get a replay of the Brian Burke, Kevin Lowe fight challenge in a barn at some point?
But I don't understand, like, he might be upset about it, but I don't understand how you can publicly be upset about it. Like, this is something that you tried and you failed at. And as much as, it might be annoying and it might be petty on the Hurricanes' part, I mean, what can you come out and say? It's a part of the CBA. It's something you tried on this team, and now they've turned around and they've tried it on you. So we haven't heard from him. I'd imagine he was somewhere on vacation when he potentially got this news. So I'm sure he's not in the best of moods that he has to deal with such a big decision at this point. But I'm just fascinated to see how this plays out, because again, like by CBA rules, if you match, you've got to keep him for a year. You can't trade Kotkaniemi for an entire year. So you've got to make sure that you hit. You've got to make sure that your projections are as correct as you can possibly be. And I can't wait to hear from them. I can't wait to hear what they have to say about this.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Now, you've got your ear to the ground there in Montreal. You mentioned that a number of Habs fans were sort of pissed off at the Canes that they would do that. And I get it, especially with the way they put salt in the wounds. They changed their Twitter profile description to French.
Yeah.
They were tweeting in French. I mean, it was just so over the top. But let me ask you about Kotkaniemi. I mean, this is a young man, I believe, who's the 3rd overall pick in the draft. I mean, he had that rookie season. He had some big moments in the playoffs that you mentioned. But, of course, he did start and finish the playoffs as a healthy scratch. The fact that he signed this deal and was in some ways an accomplice to putting the Habs in this situation, if they match, where's Kotkaniemi within the organization? And how do the fans react to the return of Kotkaniemi if, in fact, he is matched and does return?
Yeah, I think if he comes out and has the season, and maybe, he doesn't necessarily have to live up to a $6 million cap hit, but I think if he comes out and shows that he'll take a big step in year 4, especially offensively, playing with better players, by the way, because, again, the Canadiens lost Phil Deneau, so that's another guy down the middle. And so I think if Kotkaniemi's back, he's going to get an opportunity to potentially play with a Brendan Gallagher or a Tyler Toffoli and Mike Hoffman or whoever. So I think they'll put him in a good spot. But if he continues to struggle the way he has offensively over the last couple of years, and it's a bit of a roller coaster ride in year 4 like it was in years 2 and 3, I think the fan base is going to get on him, and I think he quickly turns into the whipping boy here in Montreal. So I'm so fascinated. But like, this was a fascinating storyline for him going into the year, just because of the way Marc Bergevin spoke about Kotkaniemi on, after the first day of free agency. Bergevin meets the media. He's asked about Kotkaniemi being the second line center, and he didn't necessarily give him a glowing endorsement. So now the fact that you have an offer sheet on top of that, so you kind of upset the organization in that way too. I think this is the most intriguing storyline of any, Canadian market going into the year. I think this is the one, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. Because if he comes out, picks up, a respectable 50 points and, flirts with 15, 16, 17, 18 goals, then I think the story kind of dies down a little bit. But if he struggles to produce, this is going to be a season-long thing here.
No, there's absolutely no doubt about it. Now, outside of this, what did you make of the Habs offseason? We had that incredible run to the Cup final. But since that's happened, the questions about Price's future, Shea Weber's future, a lot of things have been happening around this club.
Yeah, it kind of feels like they lost the guts of the team that went to the Stanley Cup final, doesn't it? Like Shea Weber's career might be over. He's certainly not going to play this year. Corey Perry leaving for Tampa Bay. I know he didn't put up the biggest numbers, but he was such an important part of what they did over the course of the season. They lost Phil Deneau, who is a quality two-way centerman. You don't usually see centermen, at that age leave, especially their hometown or their home province, rather. So I know they tried to replace a lot of these guys, and I like David Savard. I like Mike Hoffman. And they lost Thomas Tatar also, who was their leading point getter a couple seasons ago, by the way. But it's just there's so much unknown, and they're so unproven down the middle. Carey Price, again, had off-season surgery. He's supposed to be available either at the start of the year or, a week or two into the season. So that's not a huge concern. But they were able to retain Jake Allen so he could hold down the fort. But there's so many question marks on and off the ice. Like Shea Weber is an important leader to that team. He's a big part of what they do off the ice. And he's a big part of establishing the culture that they were able to establish over the last few years with their young players. And I'm sure he's going to be around. But it's not the same when the guy's not going into battle with you. So they have a lot of question marks, like we said, in terms of down the middle. I think that's the biggest one. Will they get any type of production outside of Nick Suzuki? I feel like they're okay on the wings. They're pretty deep when it comes to what they have there. But again, it's just about can you replicate the season that Jeff Petrie had, because he was unbelievable, but he's approaching his mid-30s now. Can you get something out of Brendan Gallagher? He was good in the regular season, struggled in the playoffs, was very banged up. But just that heart and soul, the guts of the team that went to the playoffs and the Stanley Cup final seems to be missing.
No doubt about it. Joey Alfieri of TSN in Montreal joining us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. The one name we haven't mentioned, and really didn't mention much for the final few months of the season, and certainly in the playoffs, is Jonathan Drouin. Yeah. What's the latest on Jonathan Drouin? What do we know about his absence of the club, and do they expect him to be a part of the team next year?
Yeah, it certainly looks like he's going to be going to training camp with the team. I'm not sure if they tried to move him or not. I'd imagine that his value right now is at an all-time low, so they kind of have to bring him in and hope that he has a good season. But we don't know much. Like the coach had his golf tournament last week, and Jonathan Drouin was there, but not meeting the media. Jonathan Drouin usually has his charity golf tournament, and he had it again. But he didn't speak there. So we haven't really heard much. We don't really know what the details are. What we've been led to believe is that it's some sort of mental health issue. And look, I think Dominic Ducharme kind of is the right coach to get the most out of Jonathan Drouin. He seemed to be a little bit more comfortable under Ducharme than he was under Julien. Of course, they go back with the Halifax Mooseheads in the Q, won a Memorial Cup together. So I think they'll put him in a position to succeed, but it's also up to the player. He's got to produce. And I know he's not a guy who scores a ton of goals. He's more of a pass-first winger than he is a shooter, but you've got to do better than 2 goals in 44 games or whatever it was. But I think, again, we talked about how deep they were on the wings, and they have guys like Toffoli, Anderson, Gallagher, Caulfield, Armias, Byron whenever he gets back and he's healthy. Like, they've got the bodies. They don't need him to be the go-to guy offensively. They need him to be one of the guys, but it's vital that, he does help them on the power play, because he should be a good power play player. He's a skilled guy, and at 5-on-5, he needs to do more than he's done here. So I expect him to be part of this club. For how long? I don't know. But he's a guy who he hasn't flown under the radar in Montreal. He's been a talking point for most of the summer, but I understand why he kind of got lost in the shuffle nationally.
No doubt. When you're watching the team, you're talking about the guys that are in the lineup, and when a player's away in that sort of situation, you're not beating it over the head, talking about it every day, because frankly, that it wasn't changing, and it didn't. And, to the Habs' credit, they didn't look like they missed a beat without him going, well, we all know how far they went in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Speaking of the playoffs, one guy that I thought might play more in the playoffs that we did see at times was Romanov on the blue line. How much are they expecting from Romanov going into next year, especially with Shea Weber on the shelf?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. That's what they need. That's who they need to step up. Like, it's one thing to bring in a David Savard in free agency, and he can kind of fill some of the holes that are left by Shea Weber. But I think the Canadiens need their young defenseman Romanov. Like, you've seen some really good stuff with Romanov, and you saw some things in his game, especially in his own end, that need some fixing. But he's a 21-year-old kid who clearly has a ton of upside. I think he's got the potential to be a top pairing guy down the road, but I think they want him to settle in and be that, top four defenseman that they might be lacking. A puck mover, a guy who's not shy about throwing his weight around. And again, you didn't really get to see him much in the playoffs. They went with the veterans instead, and I don't think many people agreed with them, but it's hard to disagree based on, the end result. But I think Romanov is one of those guys that you want to look to if you're the Canadiens to take a huge step forward. And he's got to eat some of those minutes that are going to be left by Shea Weber. And yeah, I think he's clearly one of those guys that they believe in. He's one of those guys that again got off to a good start. He was kind of naive in a funny way early on. Like, you saw him take some chances in some big moments, and then the coaches did try to rein him in a little bit, and I think it played with his head. But now he's got a shortened off season to kind of look back and see what the good and the bad that he was able to do in year one. But this is a player they need a lot more out of in year two, and I think that he's got the upside to do it.
Just back to Bergeron for a minute. He was looking pretty good in those medium shirts during the playoffs as his team bounced the Jets and then Vegas and went to the final. But after that, it seems like this has been a pretty tough offseason. And I mean, I think the one thing we haven't brought up is the Canadiens' incredibly controversial selection of Logan Mailloux in the draft, which I think, definitely put the historic organization in a bit of a bad light amongst a good portion of the fan base. You mentioned, we've talked about some of the other problems they've had through the offseason, and now this. Is all the shine off Bergevin from that great playoff run, and now people are on to new things that are much more problematic for the Habs?
No doubt about it. I think that's the way a lot of the fan base kind of looks at it. You built all this positive momentum, coming out of a COVID season where, it really was, I mean, not just for us here in Montreal, but for, around the world, it was very much doom and gloom. We were locked in our houses all winter. And then the Canadiens, they turn around and they give you this long, unexpected run, and things, seem to be turning around. Things seem to be looking up, but it's been one thing after another. You mentioned the Logan Mailloux situation. I think everybody was kind of shocked by that, and the organization definitely took a PR hit there. There's no doubt about that. But then you got the Weber news. They lost guys in free agency. They weren't able to retain a guy like Phil Deneau. It's just, the Carey Price Seattle thing kind of took off, and there was a chance that he might be gone, and then he needed surgery. It was announced that week. So it seems like as much as they were able to bring in guys, some local players, some good players like Paquette, Perreault, and Savard, it just seems like a lot of the other major headlines have been negative ones. So I think that you're exactly right. Whether the fan base is right or wrong remains to be seen. We'll see what the team looks like on the ice, but a lot of the shine from that run to the Stanley Cup final seems to be worn off.
Oh, Joey, this has been a heck of a lot of fun having you on the program. Hey, before we go, I do want to ask you about the Alouettes.
Yeah.
I think we saw the Hamilton team that many of us expected to come out of the gate. I was really impressed with the Alouettes in the first couple of games. The victory was there for them against Calgary. It didn't happen. But now at 1-2, I mean, is it still positive around the Alouettes? Or are they sort of looking themselves at 1-2 going, we should be better than this right now?
They should absolutely be better than this right now. And I think the biggest question mark that needs to be answered, and I want to be clear, it's not all on the quarterback, but, I think with Vernon Adams Jr., what you saw in week 2 in their first game of the season against Edmonton, big plays. They completed some long passes, long touchdown pass to Jake Winicky. They made some big plays to BJ Cunningham. They were able to get Vernon Adams out of the pocket and throwing on the run, and they hit on a lot of those plays. Unfortunately, for Montreal, I think Calgary's defensive backs did a really, really good job limiting what they were able to do in the long, passing game, and it affected them. There's no doubt about that. And you look at what the Tiger Cats were able to do on Friday night. these teams are starting to figure out that you got to challenge Montreal in the intermediate passing game. So Hamilton did a great job of limiting William Stanback. He really didn't do much in that game, which is problematic for the Als because you want to be able to roll off that play action to open up things in the passing game. And the other thing Hamilton did, they made sure they didn't get beaten over the top. They didn't give up big plays in the passing game. So you're forcing Vernon Adams to make those intermediate throws that he just doesn't seem to be comfortable with right now. And for the Als, a lot of what they want to do is, run the ball, be patient, but hit on those big plays. And when they're not able to do that, they've shown so far through 3 games that the intermediate passing game doesn't work. So it's very hard to go on long drives and sustain possession. And that's why offensively, they've been very limited. The decision-making from Vernon Adams needs to be better. They were up 14-3 in Calgary. They're driving in Calgary territory, and he throws a huge interception inside the 10. And the Als never really got momentum back until late in the fourth quarter, and it ended up being too late. And then in the fourth quarter on Friday night at home against Hamilton, they're down 13-10, and he throws, inexcusable, unforgivable pass to the wide side of the field that gets picked off by Frankie Williams, and that was it. And they never were able to bounce back. So there are other issues, but the quarterback needs to be a lot more consistent with his decision-making and execution, especially with the intermediate throws.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And the East is very interesting right now. I mean, no one saw Hamilton starting off at 0-2, but I think big picture, when you think about it, they started it in Winnipeg in the opening game and then went to Saskatchewan. And those really do look like 2 of the best teams in the Canadian Football League right now, Joey. But in the meantime, the Toronto Argonauts have looked like they are legit this year. That was a huge opportunity for Montreal to really put some space between them and the Grey Cup favorite at the beginning of the year.
Absolutely. And look, I don't think the Montreal schedule has been a walk in the park either, but I think, all things considered going into Friday night, and this is why I was expecting a lot more on Friday night, is because if you tell me at the beginning of the year, listen, you're going to go to Edmonton, you're going to go to Calgary, you're coming back 1-1, and you get to play Hamilton at home in your home opener, then I'd say, you know what, you take that. But I think there was a real opportunity missed here, just given the circumstances, and no Bo Levi Mitchell in Calgary, and Hamilton kind of being in a state of flux right now. I think there was a good opportunity to go into Ottawa at 2-1 at the very least, and Ottawa's offense looks even worse than Montreal's, and you could come out of this 3-1. Now you're in a situation where you're going to Ottawa on Friday night. They're asking themselves some questions offensively. You've got questions offensively, and there's no way that you can come back home 1-3. I mean, look, the season's young, but we're going into Labor Day. It's a 14-game season. And if you have aspirations to win the East, which I think this team is talented enough to do, you cannot come back home 1-3. There's just no way, given who you've played and the talent level that you have around you. So I'm not calling this a must-win game on Friday night, but you're certainly putting yourself in a bit of a hole if you don't get a result in Ottawa.
Joey, this has been a fantastic conversation. Last one on the way out. It's back to the Kotkaniemi signing. They've got 7 days to match. Do they take the full 7 days? And if you had to put a nickel on it, which way is it going to go?
So I think I don't want to cop out on you, but I think they'll take the time. I think they'll take the full time, but I think they would be wise to. I think the only way you can really salvage this is if you can take the picks and trade them elsewhere and get yourself some help down the middle. I know the big, the guy that everyone's been, linking to Montreal is Christian Dvorak out in Arizona. 25-year-old player, seems to have put up some decent numbers last year. So if you can go out and get yourself a guy like that to be your number 2 center, I think you owe it to yourself to do that. But in the end, I don't know that they're going to be able to get themselves a center with a first and a third round pick or even a little bit more. So I think they take the full time. And in the end, I think that they're going to reluctantly match. And they're going to hope for the best that Kotkaniemi can develop, take a big step forward, and hopefully you can get a reasonable long-term deal done with him. It's too early to walk away from the 3rd overall pick in the 2018 draft. He just turned 21 in July. I think there's some upside there, but there's no doubt that it seems like a lose-lose either way.
Joey, this was a great chat, my man. Thanks so much for doing this. Folks, you can follow him on Twitter at Joey Alfieri and check out him and the gang on TSN at 690. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Great stuff. There's Joey Alfieri with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. And let's get Remis back in here for a minute because we have some breaking news. We were just speaking with Darrin Bauming about, will the Bombers sign Naaman Roosevelt? Will they consider about it? Well, no need to consider anymore. They have just put out, the Blue Bombers have added veteran receiver Naaman Roosevelt. He comes to the Bombers with extensive CFL experience during his time with the Riders from 2015 to 2019. Two-time 1,000-yard receiver, and was Saskatchewan's most outstanding player in 2016 and named a West Division All-Star in 2017. We figured there might be some sort of response to all the drops in yesterday's game, and, well, we got it right there. Naaman Roosevelt, now a member of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, just in time to play his old team twice in the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl. We'll have much more on the signing coming up the rest of the week here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. All right, we're going to talk some golf. Do want to thank Little Brown Jug for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Locally brewed right here in Winnipeg. The flagship brand is the 1919. You can have that, but most, solid bars around the city will certainly have that on tap. And again, you can get it at your favorite beer store or pop down to the brewery on William Avenue. Maybe meet some friends out on the patio, a couple slices of pizza, a few pints. It doesn't get much better than that. You can order Little Brown Jug online for delivery within the city of Winnipeg. Order by 2 p.m. You'll get it next day delivery. And you can also schedule a delivery as well. And don't forget, Little Brown Jug is in Craft Beer Corner at the ballpark beginning tomorrow. 7 days, the 31st of August to the 6th of September. Big homestand coming up for the Gold Eyes. And you can enjoy the good stuff, Little Brown Jug at Craft Beer Corner. And don't forget about that summer variety pack. Still available now, including the summer ale and the Hefeweizen. And of course, a big shout out to our friends at Breezy Bend. We do all of our golf reports for Breezy Bend, and we've got a great guest coming up in just a second to talk about an epic playoff yesterday in the BMW Championship. But if you are thinking about a great home for you and your family on the golf course next year, give Corey Johnson a call over at Breezy Bend. You can get on the waiting list for next season. You can find out more at breezybend.ca. Incredible junior program, ladies programs as well. And the 19th hole might be even better than the 18 on the course. Big shout out to Breezy Bend. So let's talk some golf. Very much looking forward to welcoming in our next guest. For those of you who follow our good friend Gabriel Morency, he often has Mr. Dubsy himself on to talk golf, a former caddy, now golf analyst with Sports Grid, always jumping on with Gabe and Cam. It is a pleasure to welcome Dubs Anderson for the first time to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Dubsy, what's up? It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
How are you, mate? I got a little distracted when you said the 19th watering hole. My ears perked up. But hey, we got to talk about this playoff. But everyone knows Dubsy loves a cold beverage.
Well, you're with like-minded individuals here in the Peg. Thanks so much for doing this. This was, you've been around the game for a long time, and we've had some wild playoffs this year. What was it? A 7-man playoff for the bronze medal in Tokyo, and then a 6-man playoff won by Kiz a couple weeks back. But the playoff we saw yesterday had a little bit of everything. Drama, maybe some side eyes from the players, some incredible shot making, and 2 players about as different as you could have. Take us back to yesterday. What did you think about that, and how will people remember such an epic toe-to-toe battle between Pat Cantlay, now referred to as Patty Ice, and Bryson DeChambeau, maybe the most polarizing figure in all of sports?
Yeah, you're not wrong. And look, this is a golf tournament where I was sort of a little harsh on it probably yesterday, because I'm sick of seeing these golf tournaments get to 25, 27 under par. For me, that's not a test of golf. So if DeChambeau went on to win this one, we'd be complaining today. These golf courses can't defend against the big hitters. But look, Patty Cantlay, he showed us that you could still win these golf tournaments by doing it the old school way. And look, they're 2 contrasting golfers. DeChambeau, he just doesn't know how to shut his mouth and make life easy for himself. But look, they're 2 supremos of the golfing world, 2 superstars in the game. I can't fault them. I thought they were both incredible yesterday. I'm going to call it one of the best playoffs we've seen in the golf space in modern time. I thought they were both incredibly clutch. They had opportunities. They let the other ones in. But look, we've got to go back to the 14th hole when Bryson DeChambeau called out Cantlay for walking during his pre-shot routine as he was getting ready to pull the trigger. And for me, that gave Cantlay the chip on the shoulder that he didn't need to give him. And it made it very awkward for DeChambeau himself. So again, his mouth got him in a bit of trouble. But look, I can't fault DeChambeau. His golf game on the golf course, incredible. Cantlay probably put on the best putting display we've ever seen. Over 14 strokes, he picked up via strokes gained putting. But if he did not, we'd be talking about DeChambeau's driving display as probably the best we've seen all year long. It was remarkable. Not only is he long, he's hitting fairways. So a couple of heavyweights going toe-to-toe yesterday. Great to see it for the BMW Championship.
Well, okay, Dubs, let's go back to 14 for a minute because you've spent a lot of time inside the ropes. How strange was that scene? Does that happen all the time, and it just happened to be in a spot where all the cameras were on them, or is that just Bryson being Bryson?
Look, this happens a lot, right? And you know, some golfers try to go about their business nonchalant, but look, if that happens, and when I was caddying, you'd wait a couple of minutes, you'd back off, start your pre-shot routine. There's no malice from Patrick Cantlay. He's not trying to set a world record of how quick he can get to the green. He just wasn't, clear that DeChambeau was getting ready to pull the trigger. But in true Bryson form, he has to yell out. I mean, we've got thousands watching. The mics are right there, so of course they're going to pick it up. Patrick, can you stop walking? I mean, he's just not making it easy for himself, right? Like, he easily could have put the club back in the bag, start your pre-shot routine, go again. But of course, the way he does things, he has to call it out. He's very brash. And right now, it's not helping him. This carry-on is not helping his golf game. It's definitely to his disadvantage. So for me, I think someone's got to pull him aside, just have a couple of words with him. But again, he's camp. They're probably telling him, you're doing the right thing here, buddy, but it's not helping his golf game.
Well, Dubs, I think you make a great point because, I mean, I was very emotionally invested in this. First of all, I can't stand Bryson DeChambeau, and I'm certainly not alone. I was also sitting on a 27-1 ticket on Pat Cantlay from before the tournament, so I'm sweating this all out. And
Cha-ching.
When that happened on the 14th hole, I mean, Cantlay's a flatliner. I mean, you never get any emotion out of him. And if you didn't believe that it pissed him off when it happened, all you needed to see was how he hammed it up after winning. I mean, Who was that guy? Who was that guy? Getting the crowd
It wasn't
going,
Paddy Cantlay.
I mean, he was, I don't want to say he was rubbing it in, but he was making damn sure everyone, including his opponent, knew that he just took this thing down in an epic playoff and was celebrating the way, one would do that. But I couldn't believe I was seeing it, but it made a lot of sense after what you just described happening during the original 18.
I mean, you love to see it, and that's how we're taught, right? Be modest in winning, but of course, sometimes you got to let it out. And look, Patrick Cantlay is a guy that doesn't get the respect that he should. He's the only 3-time winner on the PGA Tour this season. Why doesn't he get enough respect? Because he's not flashy. He's not outspoken. He's modest. He's humble. And as we saw yesterday, methodical on the golf course. And look, I think good for Patrick Cantlay. Do it your way. He's gone through some tough times of his life and career, but here he is right now. You'd hate to bet against him on the big stage. I mean, he is Iceman, rightfully so, a well-rounded golf game. Patrick Cantlay, don't sleep on him to win majors. You'd hate to get him in a Ryder Cup matchup. I thought it was great to see, and good on him for waving the cap. If that was me, I'd be up on that green, dancing around like a WWF wrestler, shirt off, Ric Flair. Woo!
Dubs Anderson with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. You can follow him at Mr. Dubsy. The best part about all of this drama that has really been going on all year, I mean, Brooks versus Bryson, Brooks and DJ don't really like each other. Now there's Patrick Cantlay, Bryson, and then there's Patrick Reed versus everyone.
Yeah.
We're just a few weeks away from the Ryder Cup. I don't think there's any doubt that the talent of the U.S. team, I mean, they are just so stacked when you look at the overall world golf ranking. But I'll tell you what, dude, Steve Stricker's got a job on his hands getting all these guys to play nice and to come together as a team, because when you talk about intangibles and things that make great teams, I'm not sure that the American Ryder Cup team has any of it.
It's not. You make a good point. On paper, it's a stacked lineup. They shouldn't lose. But I tell you this much. If they're going from the hotel to the golf course during the Ryder Cup week, they're getting 12 separate Ubers. This is not a team that gets along. It's going to count towards something. It's probably why Team USA doesn't have the best record going against the Euros. It's a team environment. It definitely helps having that chemistry. But right now, Steve Stricker, I know he's trying to say it's not a big deal. It's a big deal. It counts for a lot.
Thomas Bjorn tweeted out yesterday during the playoff that he was searching, trying to find proof that Pat Cantlay's actually Canadian to have him off the team. I'll tell you what, though, in reality, I mean, we know what a great player Cantlay is, but when you talk about the stakes, the pressure that will be at that Ryder Cup, the atmosphere at it, a guy to be putting the way Pat Catley is, I mean, that will top everything at the Ryder Cup, a guy that literally is sinking them from anywhere on the golf course.
Yeah, and he's so poised. I mean, that's a big game player right there. That's a guy I'd hate to draw in a matchup. He's going to go about his business. He'll work you into the ground. And look, he doesn't do it the Bryson way. He's not going to overpower or intimidate you. He'll just kill you by stats, fairways, greens. Putter's going to light it up. So that's a guy Strick could be rubbing his hands in celebration towards, because right now they're the guys you need. Couple of steady heads in that locker room. They're not causing too much drama. For DeChambeau, geez, I hope he makes it there, but he's going to be causing quite the ruckus as usual. Everywhere he goes, he's storming a teacup. He can't help himself.
And I mean, I'm a fan of Brooks, but I mean, I know he can be incredibly petty and juvenile as well, and we've seen some of that this year. But I mean, I do think some of these guys absolutely cannot stand Bryson DeChambeau, and I mean, Patrick Reed's certainly in that group as well, for a number of reasons, some similar and some different than Bryson. I mean, if the Reed situation's a little different, no, they won't say that he has COVID. He's just been in hospital with bilateral pneumonia, so you can figure that one out for yourself. But he actually survived for the Tour Championship. Now, I still have no idea whether he's going to even be able to play. If he doesn't, it's probably a perfect excuse not to have him on the team. But if he is there, do you just maybe put Bryson and Reed together and say, you know what, you guys are a team, and then the other 10 guys, you try and make an actual team out of those 10?
We're just going to cop a loss on this one, boys. You guys have at it. Look, I don't know. You hear reports that DJ and Brooksy aren't the best of mates these days either. So I don't know. I think you've got to match them up based on skill set. And for me, the way DeChambeau plays, it actually matches up pretty well to Brooks Koepka's game. You know, the long bomb and gouge, the power play. It's going to be real interesting times. But look, Bryson's copping a hard time week to week on the PGA Tour, which is critical. Like, it's not helping him play well. Wait till they get to Whistling Straits. I mean, you've got half the gallery there going to be going against you. If he doesn't think they're going to be giving him 100 times harder than what he was getting yesterday, geez, don't show up, mate, if you're not ready for it. You've brought it on yourself. Like, he could easily change his perception the same way Tiger, Phil did. They weren't always so warm to in the media or the press their early years, but they knew the right things to say, turn it around. Bryson DeChambeau, he better clue on real quick, or he's gonna do it tough, pegging it up week in, week out, getting heckled. That doesn't help anyone.
Dubs, fill our listeners in on how this Tour Championship works, because it has changed a couple years ago. You've got the top 30 going in. Before it was very confusing, like who's going to win the 15 mil depending on where they are. Now it's a staggered start, and Pat Cantlay is going to be the leader before they even hit a shot.
Yeah, so look, they really want to reward the guys for having a good season. Now, Cantlay, he's the points leader. So what they do this week, the staggered stroke play format, Cantlay will start at 10 under par. Then Finau, second in the standings, he tees off at 8 under par. Third, DeChambeau, he'll go off at 7 under par. Then we go to 6 to 5, and then we start grouping players by fives, going by one-shot increments. So it's a 30-man field. By the time we get to the guys 25 to 30, they're giving Cantlay a 10-shot head start prior to even hitting a golf ball Thursday. So this is a week you've really got to favour the guys teeing up top there. Like Cantlay, he's going to be a hard man to beat. Getting a 2-shot head start over Finau, 10-shot against the guys, you know, well back in the distance. So you've really got to favour the chalk this week. Look, it's a bit of a silly format. I think it still needs some tweaks, but the idea behind it is whoever wins the golf tournament wins the FedEx Cup playoffs, wins the trophy, and it's easy to track throughout the tournament. Where, you know, a couple of years ago, it was like, well, he's going to win the Tour Championship, but Rory's going to win the playoffs. And it's very confusing. This is the way to simplify it.
Well, and there's a lot of scratch on the line, too. What is it, 15 mil for first place? I mean, the biggest prize in golf. Yeah. These guys, as much as, you know, it's not a major, I imagine them, their significant others might prefer them winning the Tour Championship to something else. I mean, this is a big deal for these players, and what an opportunity, especially for those 3 men you mentioned at the top, all playing very well. Tony Finau finally winning. I'm a big Team Tony guy, beating our guy Tony. Cam Smith. I'm still disappointed. I was on Cam at 50-1.
Stop it. I'm always on the Aussies.
That playoff into the drink right off the bat was a bit of a buzzkill. But I mean, it really will be a great, and this tournament, we can't forget, has also given us, you know, one of the more incredible scenes in golf, which of course was Tiger Woods winning a few years back,
the 18th.
which sort of Oh, and coming up to 18th, and that would have maybe been what we remember Tiger if he didn't then go and win the Masters after that.
Yeah, true story. I was at the golf course a couple of weeks ago, pristine condition. It's going to be a test this week for these boys. We're not going to see 25 under par off the tips. I mean, DJ got it to 21 here last year, but he teed off at 10 under par. So I expect more of the same this week. And that's what we want. We want it to be a test. I mean, I was walking down on 18. I didn't have the millions following like Tiger Woods, so I had to double check I was on the right golf course. But Eastlake, it's going to be a test this week. And for the guy who runs dead last, who comes 30th this week, he's still getting paid $395,000. I'm looking to get on the bag. So if anyone knows a player looking for a caddy this week, Dubsy's back in the market.
Hey, I got to ask you, from a caddy's perspective, you're going to 18. I mean, imagine being, Pat Cantley's caddy yesterday. When that putt finally goes in, you're very happy for your partner, for the player, but you must be going, like, do you do the math going, oh my God, I just made 80 grand or 100 grand?
Oh, you'd be doing the math in the Motel 6 the night before. You know exactly where you stand, what you're banking on. I'd be messaging the missus at home, make dinner plans. We're going to Mastro Sunday night. I've got a big payday coming up here. Yeah, they know exactly what's online. But for the players, they've got that much money. They don't care if it's 400 or 500K, not like us normal folks. So once it gets to that kind of money, it's play money. But yes, there's a lot up for grabs this week.
Dubs, this has been so much fun having you on the program. Schickster's in chat, and a lot of people really enjoying the conversation, but he said, Huss, ask him for his pick in the AFL Footy Grand Final. You following that, Dubs? Do you have a lean for us?
No, I don't, boys. If it's a golf bet, I'm your boy. I come from Sydney, the Sydney Swans. Buddy Franklin, not what he used to be. So no, I'd be taking up your time. If anyone's got a hot tip, tell me. I'll reach out to the boys back in Sydney and say I've got the inside lane here.
Excellent. Listen, dude, this is great. I hope we can do this again sometime. Let people know where they can find your content, and certainly when you're coming back with the boys, Gabe and Cam, the dynamic duo.
They can't get rid of me, mate. And look, I'd be happy to come back here. Anyone who gives me a clean set of ears to listen to some of the stories and talk a bit of golf, sign me up. And if there's a 19th hole nearby where we can have a couple of cold ones, get Dubsy there. If they want to follow me on socials, Mr. Dubsy. Don't ask me why. That's another long story. We'll save for the 19th hole.
Dude, we will most certainly do this again. Thanks so much for your time. Be well, and expect another DM from me. This was so much fun. We would definitely love to have you back.
Love it, mate. Have a good one.
Right on. There he is, Dubs Anderson at Mr. Dubsy. And if you're a regular viewer of Gabe and Cam over at Sports Grid, Dubsy on with them on the reg. And man, they're wonderful conversations. Hilarious dude. And you mix that with Gabe and Cam. And by the way, people are asking, yes, the return of Morency is imminent here on Winnipeg Sports Talk now with the NFL season just around the corner. All right, let's get Remo back in here. I do want to hit up the cool bet lines. And as I mentioned, a little Barry Horowitz here. Lock Shop, big week for the Lock Shop, including the Pat Cantlay pick at 27-1. So anyone that was riding with me right on. And the BC and Hamilton wins got a dub for our boosted second chance partner parlay. So it was a great week for the Lock Shop. And stay tuned. We've got a new episode coming out on Wednesday with, of course, Dustin Nielsen, who did such a great job calling that Bomber game last night. Hooked up with Dusty on Friday, had a great time, and I think not this Friday coming up, but the following Friday, heading into the Banjo Bowl, we're going to try and do a little get-together for our Lock Shop viewers, certainly Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners, out somewhere here, and hopefully pull off a little live edition of the Lock Shop as well. So I'll keep you up to date on all of that. But speaking of the cool bet lines, we have lines for the Labor Day weekend in the Canadian Football League. And Remo, how about that? The Riders, 2.5-point favorites over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Riders at -147 on the money line, Bombers +120, and the total of 42. You've also got Montreal, a 3-point favorite at Ottawa against the Red Blacks. The Ticats, after that big win in Montreal Friday night, 4.5-point favorites over the Argos. And in the Battle of Alberta, which fingers crossed will happen, the Stamps minus 3.5 point favorites over the Edmonton Elks. And Reem, the fact that the Stamps are 3.5 point favorites just shows that the bookmakers and fans have opened their eyes to what Jake Mayer's got. And pretty interesting number for the Bombers and Riders. I mean, if you're given 3 points for home advantage, basically a pick 'em. A Bombers may be a slight favorite, but if you get there right now, you can get plus 2.5 or just plus 120 if you think the blue and gold can go in and get a W.
Yeah, some interesting lines here. I guess for people who are just joining in, we do need to touch on the Bombers signing Naaman Roosevelt, veteran receiver. I think this is the classic CFL sign the guy before you play his former team twice. See if you can get any intel. He's a sure-handed receiver. They did say they agreed to this before yesterday's game, so not an overreaction to the dropsies by some of the receivers. I'd have to think how he fits in. Maybe he takes Waltarski's spot, an underneath guy, sure hands, more of a short yardage, not a downfield kind of guy. I don't know how he fit. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what the coach says.
Yeah, well, I mean, that could screw with the ratio. So, I mean, I think there'll be some decisions, and we'll be talking, we'll hear more from O'Shea and Walters at some point over the course of this week, I'm sure, heading in. But yeah, and listen, I think we got to give David Asplund credit. David we asked Darrin Bauming, we talked about it, and then 15 minutes later, the news broke that Naaman Roosevelt had signed. So, if anything, I think this was the Winnipeg Sports Talk chat willing their wishes into reality.
Does David Asplund have intel on the Bombers now? He's maybe he's trying to float it out there.
Insider.
And then Darrin tweeted, "Color me surprised by the signing." That's what he tweeted. So we'll wait and see. But as far as these lines go, I mean, if you want to ask me early leans, I'm still a believer in Montreal. Ottawa can't score any points. Matt Nichols is having a tough go. So I still like Montreal, but yeah, I agree with Joey. Vernon Adams got to get his head screwed on correctly and stop turning the ball over, and they should be able to win that game, I think, by 3 on the road.
Oh, I might pound that number right now. I mean, the Ottawa offense is absolutely dreadful. Lapa was asked whether they'd go to Dominic Davis. I mean, they said they're going to consider a whole bunch of things, but I hate to tell you, folks, Dom Davis is not the answer. It could be a real. I'm just glad Lapo and Nichols got that win in week number 1, because I think right now with the personnel they have in the nation's capital, the wins are going to be few and far in between this year. And I would be surprised if that number isn't closer to 5 or 6 by the time we get to kickoff coming up this weekend.
Montreal has burned us before, but I agree with you. I'm still on them. I'm still on them. So we'll see. The Bombers plus 2.5. I think that's a good bet. That could go either way. Hamilton back being a favorite. Maybe there's some value in the Argos at plus 4.5. And then Calgary's looking good. I mean, I was on the bet against the rookie quarterback for the first couple games, but I think Jake Myers proved himself that he's pretty good. A pretty good quarterback. Edmonton, I mean, has had struggles, but they've got their offense is pretty good.
It's not like they had a bye week and they've been, having a whole bunch of practice. I mean, their facility's been shut down, and I just hope that game happens. So we'll certainly get to that. Oh, shout out to Mitch. I cashed on the Lock Shop boosted parlay. Not bad. 2 out of 3. Yeah. It didn't start off well, but we got right back at it, got a real nice number, and we'll do it again coming up on Wednesday's show. And if you missed the Lock Shop, if you're on the podcast, though, stick it in at the Lock Shop, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, new episodes Wednesdays right now. And once we get into September, we'll be doing 2 a week with one focused on NFL weekend heading into the weekend. Just back to Roosevelt for 1 second, Reem. This signing is interesting, and you kind of mentioned it, and we've had it happen numerous times before these big rivalry games, somebody getting signed that was a longtime member of the other team. Now, there's been a long time since 2019, when Roosevelt was there. I'm not sure. I mean, it's not like he just got cut and has the entire playbook that he's going to roll into the Bombers, but certainly we'll know some of the tendencies. But listen, this guy can catch the football, and again, I guess they're saying that this was agreed to beforehand, so it is somewhat coincidental. Some of the conversations we've had about the Bombers receivers having a bit of the dropsies yesterday. The one thing that I'll just say about it is that competition is a good thing within a team and within a receiving core. And a guy like that has proven the way that he's been, and he'll certainly be motivated. playing against the Riders in both of these games over the course of the next two. And if anything, it's just a real push to, try to get the best out of the guys that are here right now that are very capable of maybe catching the football a little bit better than they did for Zach Collaros last night.
Yeah, and he's a veteran guy. He can catch the ball. And he's not the fastest guy, but he's known for his sure hands and any edge you can get. Sign him, see if it works out. Great. If it doesn't, we were kind of hoping for Cam Meredith to be activated off the practice list. We've been hyping him up since the preseason, but maybe he's still hurt. I have no idea if there's any relation there, but just talking about veteran, bringing in veteran receivers, I started thinking about that as well. But he's been in the league for a long time, so we'll see. We'll wait till we hear more from the coach and how they plan on fitting him in.
Yeah, hey, it wasn't a trade. They're getting a player that was on the street. He comes in with a great CFL resume and, can hopefully help the Bombers win some football games. Two very important football games this weekend in Regina for the Labor Day Classic, and then right back here for Banjo Bowl weekend the following Saturday. There's lots going on right now. We've got a big Bomber game in a couple weeks. A lot of people making the trip to Regina on the weekend. We've got the Gold Eyes back for 7 games beginning tomorrow, pushing for the playoffs. And, of course, Little Brown Jug will be there on the in Craft Beer Corner. And we also have a few more weeks of live racing over at Assiniboia Downs, 3 by my count. And, stay tuned. We'll have to maybe get a bunch of people out to the track and do a little WST meetup one of these days before the season's over. Remo, how are your picks looking as we try to get off to a nice start for today's action?
My Downs picks, I'm going with some familiar faces and hoping for a win. I have my picks in. You want me to start getting to them right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here, let me just sign in an HPI bet. And someone mentioned in chat, didn't they release Cam Meredith? And I was like, oh yeah, they did. But we talked about how he lives in Winnipeg, and I feel like he's not going anywhere else, right?
Yeah, we didn't get a lot of details on Cam Meredith other than he was injured. They released him. They needed other guys here. But yeah, it's not like he's about to pick up and sign with one of the other teams. I think when he is fully healthy and able to contribute, they'll certainly consider adding to the roster again. But again, it got a little more crowded today with Naaman Roosevelt. So, that'll be something that we'll just have to monitor going forward.
Yeah. Well, and then here, on with the picks. I'm really in the dumps here on my selection, so I'm keeping it simple, just going straight winners. I'm not screwing around because I did a bunch of Quinellas last week, and I would always get like half of it right and then get really upset that I missed the second one. So I'm just going to try
frustrating.
I'm going to try to hit. I'm just trying to keep it simple. Just, got to walk before I can run. Race 3. I'm going. This is the day, Huss, where I pick horses that have helped me before. Race 3. Horse 3, Drizzy to win. Drizzy, he's helped me before. Big Drizzy guy. Race 7, I'm going to this horse. You know her, Sophie McTrophy.
Oh yeah,
horse
Sophie's
6.
back.
Sophie's back. Horse 6 to win. Sophie McTrophy on race 7. Race 6, horse 5, Marianda. I believe I've won on Marianda before. A bit of a longer shot, but I don't care. I'm going Marianda. We'll go with that. And the last one, race 4. I think I bet on this horse, but it didn't win. But horse 2, Backstreet's back to show. How could I not bet on? I just went through the name. I get the chart. I go through the names. I said, oh, Backstreet's back 100%. I don't care what the odds are. It is a program pick, so this isn't like crazy off the board. But I was like, yeah, Backstreet's back. I was listening to Backstreet Boys and 90s on 9 in the car yesterday, so I think it's meant to be. It's called serendipitous.
It's funny you say that. Oh, nice word.
Yeah, there you go.
Into the thesaurus on the weekend, Remis.
Yeah.
All right. Horse race number 1. I am going with number 3, Wits Gato to win. I love the horses that have wits in them. They are often very good. And that's why in race number 2, I'm going to do a 2-3 Quinella, Carlos Sixes, who's the heavy favorite, along with Wit Loves Tacos. Moving on to race number 3, I've got a 1-3 Quinella. We're going with Drizzy and Silver Spun. And then we're actually going to also put in Trump and have a 1, 2, 3 triactor wheel. So the first 3 horses in that race, see if we can maybe pull out a little bit of extra scratch from race number 3. And then I'm also with you on Backstreet's Back, but I'm going to bet them to win. I'm going all in with the Backstreet Boys.
I might have to do that.
Let's do it.
I can't bet
we
scared.
Can both get a W.
I can't bet scared. Yeah, I'm canceling mine. I was playing scared going with the show, but you know what? You're right. I'll cancel.
So folks, you can of course attend the races tonight, tomorrow, and Wednesday. Much like any other event in the province of Manitoba right now, just proof of vaccination will get you, friends, family in there for a great night of live racing. Parade to post 7:30, and if you can't make it out, you can always watch the ASD live stream on YouTube. It's phenomenal. Shout out to Kirk and Stretch for the great work that they do. And of course, you can bet with us online and tracks around the world at hpibet.com. Man, this has been a fun show. How good was Dubsy, Reem?
A lot of love for Dubsy in the chat. Man, one thing about today's show is every guest great video, great microphone, and Dubsy no different, no hiccups, only self-induced. That was me. I did see WST Audio Gremlin in chat, but that was me. It wasn't the Gremlin. So, but yeah, he was great. Good golf knowledge. So I'd love to have him back on the show for sure.
Oh, he was phenomenal. And I'll say this, Aussies. Like, I could have had Dubsy on and had him do play-by-play of people crossing the street, and I would have listened to it. Or talking about haircuts, or just anything. Like, that voice is just fun to hear. The Aussies speak, and great golf analyst and a real fun dude to talk to. So we thank him for joining us. We'll definitely get him back on maybe when we get in and around the Ryder Cup. A few things to get to coming out of the weekend that we haven't touched on so far, Reem. Did you see the Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight last night?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
I did not. I'm glad I did not bet on it. Although if you saw it, you can tell me. I have a feeling that this was fixed.
For sure.
I have a feeling that, and so I'm really regretting not putting a sprinkle on Jake Paul by decision, because that was 15-1. Like, who really thought that Jake Paul was going to knock out Tyron Woodley? Not me. And I know a lot of the people were on Woodley. I think just because they want to see Jake Paul lose. It was just sort of like betting on your favorite team. It's the guy going against him.
Mm-hmm.
But considering the way these things are put together, I thought it's been sketchy to begin with. I'll give the Paul guys credit. They're incredible self-promoters. But considering this situation, Tyron Woodley's going to get a great paycheck. Could he have done more? Probably. And, you get that big win for Jake Paul, and his undefeated streak continues.
Yeah, I think these events are questionable, but I do like the production value of them. I loved seeing Big Cat on the betting panel where they don't know what they're talking about there. So they bring in the guys. They have the announcers. I don't know. Chris Abbott tweeted before. I mean, there's one guy boxing in fur shorts, and then
what were those?
I don't know. Jake Paul had the LCD or LED thing on his belt with his name.
Well, he also had a robot in his posse, a 10-foot robot. Did you see that?
I missed the robot. I was playing. I was streaming NHL, and I was kind of watching out of the corner of my eye.
Well, I don't know whether he went out, but I saw a video. I think Big Cat put it out of them behind the scenes meeting Paul and his entourage, and he had a 10-foot robot that walked around. It looked like the Fox robot from the football broadcast, hanging out with their crew. It was really
Cletus. Cool. Cletus, that's the name of the Fox robot.
Nicely
done. He also rocked. Last time out, he wore the Charizard necklace, like a 250K card, Pokemon card.
That's right. 10.
And this time, I was like, well, what's he gonna rock? But it was the Cleveland jersey altogether, and I don't know. He had Chief Wahoo displayed a bit too prominently. I thought Chief Wahoo got canceled. So
good point.
Yeah. So we'll see. People were texting me about this fight. Hey, when's this Paul fight? Isn't it tonight? Because they thought it was Saturday. I'm not in for the Sunday night. Saturday night is fight day, not Sunday night. Sunday night's reserved for WWE pay-per-views. Although SummerSlam was on a Saturday, so my world is totally upside down here with the scheduling. But we'll see if there's part 2. I don't know, but I do think these events are questionable, but people want to watch them. I think they're doing good business, so you can't fault them. But everyone wants to see Jake Paul get knocked out, and I think he's going to pick fighters where that's not going to happen.
No doubt. Let's get to a few NFL news and notes. Yes, I did pick J.K. Dobbins early in my draft last week, seemingly
done.
cursing him. He's
sorry.
Out for the
he was the one who was hurt. Sorry.
Yeah, he's out for the year.
It was Gus Edwards who gets the boost.
No, it didn't take a flyer on the Gus bus late, and I'm screwed because of it. So, thoughts and prayers to everybody like me that took J.K. Dobbins. Really unfortunate injury for a guy that was going to be counted on for some big touches, game in and game out for the Baltimore Ravens.
Hey, I mean, thoughts and prayers to Jake Dobbins. No one cares about your fantasy team. Come on.
Well,
how dare you celebrate a guy's...
It goes without saying. Thoughts and prayers to J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, you were saying thoughts and prayers. I thought you were going to be like thoughts and prayers to Jake Dobbins. You're like, no. Thoughts and prayers to the fantasy owners. Fantasy owners. I can't dance on a guy's, I don't want to say grave, but a guy's injury here. That's terrible.
Well, no, we're not dancing on it. I mean, we're suffering right along with it.
But you're more concerned about your fantasy team than a health of a human being. I just want to make that clear to everyone.
Guilty as charged. I guess guilty as charged. That's the
I see a lot of people. I saw a lot of people on Twitter yesterday. How dare you post about your fantasy L's? A human being is injured, and I think you can be. I mean, these are real humans. These aren't football playing robots who you're part of some video game. I'm seeing a lot of those
injuries. Part of the game. Part of the game. What can we say? Yeah. Andy Dalton's going to start for the Bears in week number 1.
For how long?
Well, exactly. But I think that's a smart move. Let's let Justin Fields get ready to actually play. Andy Dalton's a very competent quarterback. He'll be able to get the job done. We'll see how they look. I mean, if they stink and he's doing terribly, then maybe Fields comes in and there's less on his shoulders considering the way the thing started. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Trevor Lawrence, for his part, looked brilliant. They destroyed the Cowboys. And he looked like an NFL vet in his 3rd preseason game. Much better in week 1 and 2. And of course, Reen, that's because Gardner Minshew isn't looking over his shoulder anymore, as Minshew traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 6th rounder on the weekend.
Yeah, Minshew had been pretty good for them, but I guess falling out of favor. They got Trevor Lawrence. No need for Minshew. You get a pick. Sure. I mean, we'll see how he goes. I mean, Jalen Hurts, maybe some question marks about him, but he was solid last year running QB. So I think we'll wait on that plays out. And one interesting note for fantasy, everyone thought James Robinson was going to go to the moon after the injury to Etienne, but it seems like him and Carlos Hyde have been splitting reps there in Jacksonville. So that's something to watch.
Different coach with Urban Meyer taking over. So, I mean, there's no guarantees that, even without Etienne, that they'll ride Robinson like they did last season. And, of course, the Saints in Dallas now riding out Hurricane Ida. I was saying to you off air, I'm sort of a bit of a weather nerd. And, when these big storms come up, I spend a lot of time on CNN or whatever channels watching it. But I realized that this one caught me completely by surprise because I think, like a lot of people, ever since Trump's out, I haven't turned on CNN in months. Everything's so much more peaceful. So I actually missed all of this weather chaos until I was sitting at Sal's having breakfast yesterday afternoon and realized that it was coming down. And now once you go in, a real serious situation, and in all seriousness, thoughts and prayers with everyone that's dealing with it right now. I think there's 1.2 million without power right now, and they're still sort of getting to some of these areas that were hard hit and seeing all the damage. But from an NFL standpoint, the Saints are riding this out in Dallas and might not be back in New Orleans all of this week. So certainly, a storm of that size, of that magnitude, playing havoc with everyone in that area, including the National Football League team. And we have to get to this, Remo. Nice weekend for the Jays. They get 2 of 3 from the Detroit Tigers. They're going up against the Orioles, the free space on the bingo card for the next 3 games. But to me, the story of the majors coming out of this weekend is the New York Mets. These idiots. I mean, they had a great start. They rode Jake DeGrom for a while, and now it's all caved in. Their offense is horrible. The season is going the exact wrong direction, and the fans are getting on them. And they've decided that as a team, they're going to fight back against the fans, and they've got a new quote-unquote celebration. When they do something well, hit a home run, they come around third, thumbs downing everybody. And they were honest. If you can, Remo, read that clip from Lindor there.
It says, when we don't get success, we're going to get booed. So they, that being the fans, are going to get booed when we get success. And that was Javi Baez saying that. And Baez, Lindor, and Kevin Pillar were among the players bashing the thumbs down sign, which I think is ridiculous. Like, who pays, who allows you to become a professional baseball player? It's the fans. I mean, they haven't played great. I can show you Sandy Alderson had a statement too.
I've got it right here. You can get it up. I'll read it. In a post-game press conference, this is from the GM of the Mets, Javi Baez stated that his thumbs down gesture during the game was a message to fans who recently have booed him or other players for poor performance. These comments and any gestures by him or other players with a similar intent are totally unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Mets fans are understandably frustrated over the team's recent performance. The players and organization are equally frustrated. But fans at Citi Field have every right to express their own disappointment. Booing is every fan's right. The Mets will not tolerate any player gesture that is unprofessional in its meaning or is directed in a negative way toward our fans. I will be meeting with our players and staff to convey this message directly. Mets fans are loyal, passionate, knowledgeable, and more than willing to express themselves. We love them for every one of these qualities. This is in New York, for crying out loud. I mean, booing is part of being a fan. And, like when the times are good, you're a god. But when the times are bad, they're all over you. And for Lindor, what did they sign him to? Like $200, $300 million?
Yeah,
for
he's
him
had
to do that, these
season.
guys are absolutely brain dead. And the stones on it. We talk a lot about, some of the good guys in sports. Well, there's a lot of incredibly entitled sucks out there. And I'll tell you what, a lot of them are playing for the New York Mets right now. What a joke.
Yeah, they've had a terrible, second half here. I mean, deserve the booing. I think Mike McIntyre was talking on Twitter on the weekend about, personal insults. I mean, obviously those are not fair, but you can say, you haven't performed to your expectations. We're going to boo you. I mean, that's part of being a fan. And this is a very WWE heel move, going at your own fans and giving them the thumbs down when you're doing something good. Imagine sitting in the room and how they came up with that. The conversations leading into the guys
that thought, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Okay, let's all do that. Well, great. I mean, insane. brain dead. All right, geez, we're just about at 3:00. We do got to get out so we can get this thing, get the podcast up. Quickly, have we confirmed that McPizza is not coming back? And in fact, the surprise is Spicy McNuggets. Yeah, thumbs down to that. That I'll thumbs down to. No problem. If it's not the pizza, it should have at least been McRib. Spicy McNuggets. Who cares?
I don't care. Sorry. I was going to say, the fact that they tweeted the thing you've been asking for arrives 8:31. No one's been asking for Spicy McNuggets. Everyone's asking for McRib, McPizza. So they're going to get a beatdown on Monday, but everyone was talking about McDonald's because of that tweet. So I think it's tomorrow. They're going to announce Spicy McNuggets. I mean,
I will be replying with the Yankee fan gif of the guy just like this.
Yeah, it's just you don't
best.
Play with people's emotions like that on social media, Huss. That's how you take big L's.
No doubt about it. And we should give condolences to Robin Short, who passed away a long time. I believe the editor of the St. John's Telegram, basically synonymous with the maritime, Newfoundland in particular, and sports out there for a long time. And certainly those of us in the sports media business that had spoken to him before, all saddened when learned of his passing. And we heard a number of people from all around the country really speaking about just how beloved Robin Short was out on the Rock.
Yeah, he's battling brain cancer, and I was surprised to hear this. 56 years old. We had Robin on the old station many, many times, especially when the Jets affiliate was in St. John's, and there are other events out there. We would call him up, and he was always very generous with his time, always great to talk with. And I was very saddened and shocked to see this news over the weekend. Very nice, write-up eulogy in the Telegram, where he worked for, I think, for a long time.
No doubt about it. The minute we talked about this McDonald's controversy, the chat went absolutely off. But shout out to the WST audio gremlin. I'm with you. The cheddar melt. Not enough people are demanding that to come back, because that was one of the best burgers that they've ever done. Speaking of burgers, it is Burger Week. Burger Week is beginning today. And because it's been so massive in Winnipeg, it's now actually 2 weeks. So I will have some burger reports at some point. We might have to get Carter Chen on at some point at the end of the program.
That would actually...
For a full, he is the burger meister. He'll probably go through 40 or 50 over the course of the next couple of weeks. So he will certainly have some great tips for our listeners.
Maybe
that's for sure.
Friday or something, be like week 1 Burger Week recap. Yeah, that would be cool.
That actually would be good. And I got to give a shout out to Carter, because he was the one that sent me a text from Royal with an inventory update that we were down to just 3 of each. And I see Schickster, shout out to Schickster, who literally during the show went over to Royal to pick up a hat. Thank you very much for doing that. We appreciate the support. 2 dad hats, 3 snaps available still at Royal Sports, and a couple left on the website. If you're from outside of the city, head to winnipegsportstalk.com and click on store, and we'll get you hooked up. All right, last thing on the program. I said what a great weekend I had. It was great to hook up with Dusty. Joe Marcoux, TSN 1290 OG was in on Thursday. Got together with him and the Royal guys. Game yesterday was phenomenal. But the highlight, or one of the many highlights of the weekend, was my first live wrestling commentary with CWE, Reem. The event was out at the Lilac Resort, a place that I'd never been. And what a wild place that is. There was hundreds of kids in Halloween costumes trick-or-treating down these rows of trailers. And then the crowd for the wrestling event was equally wild. Tons of kids in costumes, adults in costumes. And I got to say, the venue that they had to pull this off, as well as for the taping for CWE, was wild. So shout out to Dynamite Dave Petro, who did the play-by-play. I did the color. You can check it out at the Canada's Wrestling Elite on Facebook. I believe some of the early matches are there available right now. And if not, we'll be doing some more TV lately. But I told you, Reem, when they asked me, hey, you want to come and do some wrestling commentary? My answer was, I've been waiting all my life for this call. And finally got to do it with fans, and it was awesome. Shout out to everyone out at Lilac Resort. Looked like everyone had a lot of fun. And man, the guys in the ring put on a great show as well.
Yeah, those guys do great work, and I've been to a couple of their shows, and I'll have to get to them, but that looked like an amazing atmosphere. Outdoor event. I was having flashbacks to WrestleMania 9 at Caesar's Palace when you showed me the ring.
That's what it felt like. What it felt like.
Exactly. So pretty awesome.
Hey, right on. All right, we got to get the podcast up. Everyone, thank you. A great turnout in chat today. Tomorrow we'll have much more on the Naaman Roosevelt signing. Look ahead to the Banjo Bowl. Some more on the NFL now that the preseason is finished. The latest on the Montreal Canadiens, whether they're going to match the Jesperi Kotkaniemi offer sheet, and so much more. Big thanks to Dubs Anderson. It was awesome to have him on the program. Darrin Bauming was great. Joey Alfieri in Montreal. Of course, Michael Remis, and all of our sponsors, including Canadian Club Whiskey, Royal Sports. Don't forget, limited availability of these hats left. 3 snaps, 2 dad hats. Jump on those before they're gone. Nick from Nick and Nikki DQ, with 4 locations here in Winnipeg. Not AutoCorp, Boston Pizza, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend, the delicious taste of Little Brown Jug Brewing, and of course, Cool Bet Canada. For Michael Remis, folks, I'm Andrew Paterson. Have a great Monday night. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. live on YouTube, later on in the afternoon in your podcast feed here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.